Chapter 52. Hey, did you hear? That guy in the old alley was set up. I heard that he was messed up quite badly. When he was found, he seemed to have gone crazy. Didn't they say that he was messed up because he was drunk? He hasn't recovered yet, right? I also heard that when his friends asked him who did it, he kept saying, cat and monster. I guess he was really scared out of his wits. Didn't he kill a kitten a while ago? Because of that matter, I said a few words and he even kicked me. It still hurts now. If you ask me, this is karma. Hey, boss, give me another fried dough stick. Early in the morning, at some breakfast places near the old building district, people were eating breakfast while talking about the tattooed man. The tattooed man was found around 11 or 12 o'clock in the middle of the night. His buddies who were guarding the clubhouse saw that he hadn't shown up, so they sent 2 people who were relatively free to look for him. However, there was no one at home, so they found him in the dead end. When they found the tattooed man, he was still curled up on the ground. His whole body was twitching, and he was in a daze. He was mumbling something, but no one could hear what he was saying. Around the tattooed man were glass shards from beer bottles. His clothes were torn by the shards. His hands, face, and exposed calves were all covered in wounds. His pants were still tied up, but the smell of urine was very strong. At that time, some people who came back from work in the middle of the night saw a flashlight shining over there. They took a look, and then the rumors spread. No one called the police. Even if they did, the police didn't want to care. These people all had criminal records. As for the personal grudges between these people, the police were too lazy to care. Moreover, that person was just a small fry. There was no need to spend time and energy investigating. No matter what the tattooed man's situation was, or what the residents around the old building district were talking about, in the east courtyard, Enchanting got out of bed in a relaxed manner. He squatted on his personal chair and ate breakfast. When he came back last night, even if he washed his hands and got some fresh air, the smell of alcohol still lingered on his body. The moment he came back, he was discovered by the Jiaopa. The Jiaopa even suspected that Enchanting had gone to that tavern to eat or drink secretly. However, seeing that Enchanting was quite sober, walking steadily, in good spirits, and clean, she didn't think too much about it. However, she still reminded Enchanting not to go to places like restaurants at night, or he would be stewed. Enchanting pulled his ear. Since the matter had been resolved, he wouldn't stay there for long. Enchanting had a good sleep last night after settling a load on his mind. This morning, he ate a big bowl of Jiao Ma's Sanxian noodles and went out with the other Jiao family members. After they arrived downstairs, the Jiaopa rode the scooter to the biology building. The Jiao Ma carried the grocery basket and sent the 2 children to school with Enchanting. Then, Enchanting went for a walk while the Jiao Ma went to buy groceries. The weather was getting warmer, and the sun was very comfortable now. The birds on the campus started to make noise again, and the leaves started to sprout. It wouldn't be long before the heavenly poop roads in the campus started to drop bird poop again. Anyway, Enchanting didn't walk on those roads now. The campus environment was good, and it was green. However, when there were more birds, there would be more bird poop. Enchanting could smell the bird poop from far away. Enchanting walked on the green belt of the campus. Of course, this was only for humans. For cats, it didn't matter. After all, Enchanting often stepped on it. There were some flowers blooming here. Enchanting had seen them before when it was snowing, but he didn't go over to take a look. He walked closer to take a look. The leaves looked like the camellia that old man Lon had mentioned. He didn't know what species it was, but it was very beautiful. Enchanting went over to take a sniff. There was no fragrance. While looking at the flowers, Enchanting heard a girl's voice not far away. She was probably talking to her boyfriend on the phone. "You've been to Pearl City to help with the project for more than 3 months. Didn't you say that you would be back in 3 months? Delay? How long will it take? Well, I hope to see you next month. By the way, what do you think of the specimen I gave you?" The girl was talking on the phone, and the high heels on her feet kicked a small stone on the road. What did you say? The girl's voice suddenly rose. That's a specimen I made with the leaves of the acer claw in front of the dormitory. How could it be those low-quality goods sold on the street? Of course, you can't tell. Do you know the difference between a poppy and a beauty? Do you know the difference between a cherry blossom and a peach blossom? You don't know, you can't even tell the difference between a husky and an Alaskan. Zheng Tan, who was listening by the side, was speechless. My brother in Pearl City, you've worked hard. Soon, the girl hung up the phone and walked away quickly in her high heels. Zheng Tan recalled the days when he chased girls in Tianjin University. At that time, he had used all kinds of tricks to get those few flowers. Lowering his head to look at the paw, Zheng Tan raised his head again and sighed. Life is unpredictable. Zheng Tan was looking at the sky in deep thought when a voice suddenly came from behind him. Black charcoal, are you looking at birds? Zheng Tan's ears twitched when he heard the voice, and he turned to look. The next moment, a pile of bird poop fell from the sky and dripped onto Zheng Tan's ear. Zheng Tan was speechless. F***ck, that's why I hate these birds that shit everywhere. They have no integrity at all. The culprit had already flown away, and before it flew away, it called out twice to show its existence. The bird poop was still a little warm when it dripped onto his ear, but it quickly turned cold. There was also that smell, and Zheng Tan wanted to catch that stinky bird and cut it into pieces. Don't shake your ears, you'll shake it onto your body, Little Zhua said with a smile. Hearing Little Zhua's words, Zheng Tan immediately stopped moving and froze. Little Zhua took out a tissue from her bag and slowly squatted down. Zheng Tan was a little shocked by her actions. Was it okay to squat down with such a big belly? Little Zhua used the tissue to wipe the bird poop off Zheng Tan's ear, then tapped Zheng Tan's head and slowly got up. You're so lucky. Zheng Tan pulled his ear. His luck was really bad. Come, let's go to my place. I'll wash your ears, Little Zhua said to Zheng Tan as she walked to the trash can and threw away the tissue. Zheng Tan also felt that his ears were a little weird. He kept feeling that there was still a pile of bird poop on his ear, and Zheng Tan could smell it. He would only feel better after washing it clean, or else he would feel uncomfortable. As they walked towards the Western District, Little Zhua's smile did not stop. She even said to Zheng Tan, I heard that most birds don't have bladders, and their rectums are very short, so they urinate and defecate at the same time. If humans and cats want to go to the toilet, they can hold it in and excrete it. But birds can't. They can excrete anywhere and anytime, including when they're flying. So this group of bladderless birds were the real ones who defecated and defecated wherever they wanted. Zheng Tan scolded those birds in his heart as he walked. Even General, who had not shown up for a long time, was also scolded by Zheng Tan. Once again, he came to the Western District compound where Little Zhua lived. Zheng Tan saw a few cats out for a walk, and a few lying on their balconies, basking in the sun and wagging their tails. There were more and more cats in the Western District. When Zheng Tan first arrived, he also came to the Western District compound. At that time, there were not many cats, and there were a few kittens that looked like they still had baby hair. In the blink of an eye, the kittens had become big cats. He wondered if there would be a big fight between the cats in the Eastern and Western districts. The sheriff would definitely be very happy. A group fight. When he thought of that scene, Zheng Tan felt that it would be spectacular. He had never seen cats fight in a group before. As he thought about it, he arrived at Little Zhua's residence. The nanny was watching TV. When she saw Little Zhua come back, she had a caring smile on her face. But when she saw Zheng Tan walking in beside Little Zhua's feet, the smile on the nanny's face suddenly cracked. Zheng Tan did not care about what the nanny was thinking. He just wanted to wash his ears quickly. The smell of bird poop made Zheng Tan want to vomit. Little Zhua got some warm water. There was no shower gel for pets, so Little Zhua chose a more gentle shower gel and dripped it on Zheng Tan's ears. She rubbed it gently with her fingers. In order to make it easier for Little Zhua, Jing Tan jumped onto a high stool. Little Joie sat on the chair, so she did not have to squat and feel uncomfortable. There was only bird poop around his ears. It was washed quickly. After wiping it with a dry towel, it still had the fragrance of shower gel. Jing Tan felt that his mood was better again, and his tail began to wag unconsciously. Just like last time, Little Joie was lying on the recliner, and Jing Tan was lying on the moon chair next to her. The difference was that Little Joie was not reading a book this time. She was looking at a photo album. There was also a plant specimen in the album. Jing Tan stretched his neck to take a look. It was a 4-leaf clover specimen. This type was harder to find. Jing Tan used to look for a long time in school to chase girls, but he could not find one. Later, he spent money to buy it from someone else. Seeing Jing Tan come up to take a look, Little Joie said, "This is a 4-leaf clover. It is a variant of the 3-leaf clover. I heard that it represents luck. This specimen was given to me by a junior in the physics department. Here, it's her." Jing Tan looked at the girl in the photo that Little Joie was pointing at. Wasn't that the tough girl with the phone that he saw today? But she is no longer in the physics department. She took the postgraduate entrance examination to study botany. She has always been interested in plants. Little Joie said, "This 4-leaf clover was given to me by her, but she said that this is a 4-leaf clover of the triax plant. It is very common for the triax plant to mutate into 4 leaves. The probability of finding a 4-leaf clover is relatively high. She originally wanted to find a 4-leaf clover of the oxalis plant. Only the 3-leaf clover of the oxalis plant family has real heart-shaped leaves. Unfortunately, she has never found it. The 4-leaf clover is a mutated individual. Relatively speaking, the probability of mutation of the oxalis plant is very small. It is difficult to find an individual with 4 heart-shaped leaves. Only a very small number of plants will grow a 4th leaf under genetic mutation." Was there a difference? Jing Tan looked at it carefully. He did not know how this specimen was made. It was still green, and there was a V-shaped white halo in the center of each leaf. Was this the 4-leaf clover that Little Joie was talking about? Jing Tan recalled the grass that he found when he was picking up girls in the past. When he found it, it was the kind with heart-shaped leaves. There was no white V-shape. But later on, he bought a 4-leaf clover. It was similar to the specimen in Little Joie's photo album. Oxalis 4-leaf clover? The difficulty was really high. Little Joie exclaimed softly. Jing Tan's nerves immediately tensed up. He looked over. Was she about to give birth? Little Joie just put down the photo album and smiled. "It's moving." "What's moving?" Jing Tan was at a loss. Then, Jing Tan followed Little Joie's gaze and looked at her protruding belly. After returning home, Little Joie took off her coat. Her sweater revealed the protruding curve. Jing Tan was still looking at Little Joie's big belly in confusion. Just as he was about to look away, he noticed that there was a sudden movement. "Black Charcoal, your brother is greeting you." Little Joie said to Jing Tan, "Come over quickly." "What for?" Jing Tan hesitantly jumped from the moon chair to the deck chair. However, he still wanted to stay away from Little Joie's big belly. He felt that it was quite scary. However, Little Joie did not let Jing Tan avoid it. She grabbed Jing Tan's arm and pulled him over. Jing Tan's palm was about to touch that big belly in the next moment. Jing Tan hurriedly pulled his hand back. His claws had thrown wine bottles and drugged people yesterday. He felt that it was not good to touch it. Little Joie saw Jing Tan pull his hand back and was about to say something when her belly moved again. Jing Tan looked at the movement. Was it really greeting him? After thinking for a while, Jing Tan slowly moved over. He did not raise his hand. Instead, he gently pressed his forehead against the place where the movement had just occurred. The next moment, his forehead seemed to be touched by something. Perhaps, was this the feeling of a new life? In the future, this little guy will have to call Black Charcoal Big Brother. "Yes, Big Brother Black," Little Joie said. Zheng Tan returned to the moon chair. A scene of a human child following behind a black cat and calling it Big Brother Black appeared in his mind. Zheng Tan trembled. It was a little hard for him to imagine it. F***ck, when the time comes, will she pull my tail? If she does, I will whip her without hesitation. Zheng Tan did not eat at Little Zhua's place in the afternoon. The housekeeper looked at him as if she was looking at a god of plague. She kept a distance of 2 meters away from Zheng Tan. After returning to the Jiao family for lunch, Zheng Tan rolled on the sofa for a while. He could not fall asleep, so he ran out again. He wobbled his way to Old Man Lan's flower garden. He suddenly remembered that he seemed to have seen the sorrel grass that Little Zhua mentioned in Old Man Lan's flower shed. Didn't Old Man Lan's flower garden always have treasures? Zheng Tan was ready to try his luck. Except for those flower sheds with special signs hanging on them, the other flower sheds were not locked. When Zheng Tan entered the flower garden, Old Man Lan was busy in one of the flower sheds. Hearing the sound of the flower shed, Old Man Lan just turned his head to look at Zheng Tan and then continued to work. Some of the flower shed's doors were open. Zheng Tan looked around one by one. Finally, he saw the sorrel grass in one of the flower sheds near the head. There was no special plant in this flower shed. The plants that were planted in the past were moved away, so there was no plant here. When Zheng Tan came here last time, there was a special sign hanging on the flower shed. Later on, the door was closed. Today, it was open. Old Man Lan was probably sampling again. Old Man Lan did a mutation experiment here. He did not know what kind of new flowers he induced. Zheng Tan did not know. Anyway, Old Man Lan and the other old men treated it as a treasure. Zheng Tan walked in and came to the side of the sorrel grass. He looked at it carefully. It was indeed a heart-shaped leaf. He did not find the wrong one. This kind of plant was too common. Zheng Tan saw it often. He was too lazy to pay attention to it when he walked around. However, Zheng Tan still had the mentality of trying to see if there were any special mutated plants here. 3 leaves. 3 leaves. 4 leaves. When he saw the 4-leaf plant, Zheng Tan was happy. He heard that this represented luck. Before Zheng Tan could be happy for 2 seconds, he found that there were many 4-leaf plants beside the 4-leaf plant. However, 3-leaf cultivators were rare here. What the F***ck was going on? Didn't they say that 4-leaf plants were rare? Chapter 53. There were a lot of 4-leaved grasses, but a 3-leaved variant of oxalis was not so easy to find. Most of the ones sold on the market were not 4-leaved oxalis. As Xiaozhua said, the probability of encountering this kind of 4-leaved oxalis was not high. Otherwise, the market would not replace it with other grasses. Just that, looking at the clump of 4-leaved oxalis in front of him, Zheng Tan's mood was complicated. Zheng Tan felt that if the students outside knew about this, they would definitely come over and finish this clump. No wonder there were not many things planted here, but the flower shed door was usually closed tightly. In addition to the reason of the flower shed itself, Old Man Lan must also know about these oxalis. Zheng Tan raised his paw to move these oxalis. As he was cursing in his heart, he suddenly noticed a special individual. It was smaller than the surrounding leaves, but the reason why Zheng Tan noticed it was mainly because its leaves were a little strange. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Zheng Tan counted again. There were indeed 9 leaves. Could it be that 3 plants grew side by side? Looking at this grass, the stems of the other branches were still very ordinary, but this stem with 9 leaves was indeed thicker than the others. However, although the stem was thick, the 9 leaves were very small. The largest leaf was only 2/3 of the other plants, and the small leaf was only a little bit. It could barely be seen growing on it. However, even if its leaves were small, there were still 9 leaves growing on each other. 9 leaves. How could this happen? Was it a product of the mutation of other plants in the past? Zheng Tan couldn't understand. However, if he didn't understand, then so be it. Zheng Tan was too lazy to be entangled. Then, he looked at the leaves on the other branches of the plant. They all had 3 leaves. Only this branch had 9 leaves. Zheng Tan was ready to pull up the whole plant along with the leaves of the other branches. However, he didn't control his strength and broke it. This made Zheng Tan depressed. Sure enough, cat claws were not as good as human fingers. Ignoring the other branches, Zheng Tan picked up the branch with 9 leaves and walked out. Black charcoal, what's that in your mouth? Old Man Lan said to Zheng Tan after finishing his work in the flower shed. When he walked out, he saw him with something in his mouth. Zheng Tan glanced at the old man and then at the flower shed. Oh, you found out. That's something I've kept for myself. Out of habit, Old Man Lan was showing off his work, but when he saw the stalk of grass in Zheng Tan's mouth, his voice stopped abruptly. Zheng Tan ignored him, jumped directly from the box to the roof of the flower shed, and ran away in the blink of an eye. Old Man Lan was still standing where he was, recalling the scene he had just witnessed. What black charcoal was holding seemed to be more than 4 leaves. There were at least 6 or even 7 leaves. However, Old Man Lan was only stunned for a moment. He didn't care about the oxalis grass the most. Those were just for fun. In the entire flower garden, he cared about his orchids the most, so he quickly forgot about the oxalis grass Zheng Tan found. Coming out of Old Man Lan's small flower garden, Zheng Tan went directly to the West District family compound. Every time Zheng Tan came out, it was during class and work hours, so there weren't many people. There were still some people in the campus, but there weren't many people in the family compound. When he entered the West District family compound, a cat rushed over with a threatening growl. Zheng Tan ignored it and ran directly to the small high-rise building where Xiaozhua lived. There was a door guard downstairs. Zheng Tan waited for a while. When someone came out, Zheng Tan took advantage of the gap and ran in. The person who came out was Xiaozhua's nanny, who was throwing the trash downstairs. When Zheng Tan rushed in, the nanny was so scared that she almost threw out the trash bag in her hand. She hated black cats the most. Just now, the black cat passed by her feet. Although it didn't touch her, she felt goosebumps all over her body. After thinking about it, the nanny decided to walk around downstairs before going up. She didn't want to go upstairs and face the black cat. She always felt that the black cat was very evil. If it weren't for Xiaozhua and Professor Ye's words, she would have already hit the cat with the pan. Throwing the trash in her hand into the trash can, the middle-aged nanny shook her head. She really didn't know what Xiaozhua and Professor Ye were thinking. Weren't they afraid that the child would have problems? Although the nanny hadn't been here for long, she usually chatted with some of the teacher's family members in the compound when she was bored and knew some things. She heard that the child in Xiaozhua's belly was not guaranteed to be healthy. Even if there were no abnormalities found so far, who knew? Many people said that even if there were no abnormalities, the child's IQ was very likely to be different from ordinary children. There were such examples before. Now the child was in his teens, but his IQ was not even comparable to those in kindergarten. Wind from an empty cave may not be without cause. These people's guesses were also well-founded. After all, according to the time, when Xiaozhua was accidentally pregnant, she was following up on a project of Lord Zheng. That project came into contact with some radioactive elements. Even if there were protective measures, but even the doctors in the affiliated hospital were not optimistic. In order to avoid trouble if he took the elevator and other people bumped into him, Zheng Tan chose to take the stairs. It was only 6 floors. Zheng Tan climbed 5 floors every day. This height was nothing to Zheng Tan. When he arrived at room 606, Zheng Tan jumped up and pressed the doorbell. The nanny should still be downstairs. It was not convenient for Xiaozhua to move around at home alone, so after Zheng Tan pressed the doorbell twice, he squatted in front of the door and waited. After waiting for a while, the door opened. At first, Xiaozhua thought that the nanny didn't bring the key and didn't see anyone when she opened the door. She looked down and saw Zheng Tan squatting in front of the door. Before Xiaozhua could see what Zheng Tan was holding in his mouth, Zheng Tan had already run through the door. He jumped onto the moon chair in Xiaozhua's room and lay on his stomach, panting. Xiaozhua took the small cup that Zheng Tan used to drink water from the water dispenser. She tested the temperature of the water before putting it on the desk. Zheng Tan jumped onto the desk and drank some water. In fact, he was not very thirsty. He stopped after licking 2 mouthfuls. In the past, Zheng Tan was not used to this way of drinking water. Later, he gradually got used to this non-human way of drinking water. Xiaozhua was really happy to see Zheng Tan. She didn't expect this black cat to come again in the afternoon after coming in the morning. Xiaozhua knew what the eyes of the people around her meant. Therefore, many times, Xiaozhua was not willing to go out and face those people. Occasionally, when she went out for a walk, she would choose to do so when there were fewer people around. There were always those people who seemed to care about you, but every word they said stabbed you in the heart. However, every time she was with this cat, Xiaozhua always felt especially relaxed. Therefore, Xiaozhua had already made up her mind that if she could come back in the future, she would also raise a cat at home. Zheng Tan finished drinking the water and saw that Xiaozhua was still looking at him. He did not notice the grass on the moon chair, so he used his chin to point in the direction of the moon chair. When Xiaozhua saw this, she looked towards the moon chair. Xiaozhua picked up the grass on the chair. When she saw it clearly, her face was full of disbelief. She looked at Zheng Tan and then at the grass in the palm of her hand. 9 leaves, like the petals of a flower, stacked together. The smallest leaf in the center was only that big, but it was indeed 9 leaves. Xiaozhua heard from the junior who had transferred to another hospital that the 4-leaf clover had given her that the extra leaf of the lucky grass represented luck. There were also the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th leaves. They all had their own meanings. What did the 9th leaf represent? It represented a narrow escape, the good luck of a phoenix's nirvana. A narrow escape, the phoenix's nirvana, although it was just a legend, something that people used to comfort themselves. When people were at the bottom of the valley, when they were close to despair, there would always be something that made them persevere. It could be a belief, a person, something, or some obsession. After knowing that she was pregnant, although Xiaozhua did not show much on her face, she had never let go of her worries. She hoped that her child would be healthy. It did not need to be too smart, as long as it was healthy. However, the word healthy was an extravagant hope for someone in Xiaozhua's situation. The gazes of the people around her and the words they said behind her back were so oppressive that Xiaozhua could not breathe. And now, the lucky grass with 9 leaves in her hand made Xiaozhua suddenly have the urge to cry out loud. The 9-leaf clover in her hand was not big. People had always thought that it was just a legendary 9-leaf clover. It was as if Xiaozhua had seen a shining star in the darkness of despair. Where the star pointed was the direction of hope. Zheng Tan stood on the desk while Xiaozhua sat on the recliner looking down at the grass in her hand. Therefore, Zheng Tan could not see the expression on Xiaozhua's face. However, seeing the droplets of tears falling, Zheng Tan was also at a loss. Crying? It can't be, right? It's just a piece of broken grass. Is there a need to cry? Pregnant women are so sentimental. Shaking his beard, Zheng Tan really did not know how to react. Not long after, Xiaozhua sniffed and said, "A 4-leaf clover is not easy to find. Many people can't find one even after searching for a long time. I didn't expect you to be able to find this." Zheng Tan really wanted to say that this 4-leaf clover was not difficult to find. Really, Old Man Lon had a lot of them hidden in his flower shed. "Child, even if mommy can't come back in the future and can't accompany you, Brother He will accompany you," Xiaozhua whispered. Zheng Tan pulled his ears. In his mind, he recalled the scene of a little kid in Huang's house grabbing Huang's tail and sending it into his mouth. Then, Zheng Tan was horrified. "I don't want to take care of children. Calling him Brother He is useless. I can't even call him daddy. I'm just a cat now. They'll grab my tail and pull my ears. They'll even cry at me for no reason. Zheng Tan was a little confused by Xiao Zhuo's reaction. Xiao Zhuo even said that she wanted to thank Zheng Tan properly. However, looking at Xiao Zhuo's expression, Zheng Tan was afraid that something bad would happen. With such a big belly and so sentimental, was it really okay? Fortunately, at this moment, the nanny came back. Zheng Tan took the opportunity to run out. Not long after, when Zheng Tan met Xiao Zhuo again, who was walking outside with the nanny to bask in the sun, Xiao Zhuo showed Zheng Tan the pendant hanging around her neck. The pendant was slightly bigger than a longan fruit. Inside it was the 9-leaf clover that Zheng Tan found. The material that wrapped the clover was unknown. It was neither plastic nor glass. The material was transparent. However, because of the plant inside, the pendant looked green and full of vitality. The nanny was sitting on another chair 10 meters away. She was a little far from Xiao Zhuo and Zheng Tan. She could not see what Xiao Zhuo was hanging and was not interested. Now, her attention was on Zheng Tan. She was afraid that Zheng Tan would run over. If Xiao Zhuo was not here, the nanny would have run away the moment she saw Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan felt that Xiao Zhuo was a little different today. Compared to the Xiao Zhuo before, Xiao Zhuo felt more lively. Unlike before, even when she smiled, there was a trace of melancholy. Zheng Tan yawned and shook his fur. Seeing that Xiao Zhuo and the nanny had walked away, Zheng Tan continued to walk forward. He was going to go to Jiao Pa's office to sleep. Recently, Jiao Ma's colleagues often came to the house to play, so Zheng Tan did not want to stay at home and face those unfamiliar people. When he arrived at the biology building, Zheng Tan did not immediately go to Jiao Pa's office. He saw a group of people dissecting white mice in the public laboratory on the first floor. Although he did not see Exian, Zheng Tan saw a familiar face. Wasn't this the beef jerky? Zheng Tan did not remember Su Chu's name, but he remembered his Inner Mongolian beef jerky. Su Chu's size was very eye-catching among those people. He was wearing a sweater inside and a white lab coat on the outside. After the winter break, he had put on some weight and looked like a polar bear. Zheng Tan was suddenly interested. He squatted on a camphor tree outside the window of the public laboratory on the first floor and looked over there. The windows of the laboratory were not all closed, so Zheng Tan could hear the voices of those people inside. At the beginning of March, the scores of the graduate entrance examination were announced. As for the cutoff score for the second round, because Tsinghua University was an independent university, the cutoff score was released before the national cutoff score. In the middle of March, all the faculties announced the cutoff score one after another. When Zheng Tan was at home, he heard Jiao Pa mention that the big guy did not exceed the cutoff score by much, but at least he passed the cutoff score. It was reasonable to say that the second round would take 2 weeks, and it was based on the ratio of 1:1. With a 2:1 ratio difference, those who passed the cutoff score would be eliminated. However, when the scores of the first round were announced, many people with higher scores had already started to contact the teachers in the university. As for those with lower scores, they had already started to look for connections to find a teacher they liked and settle down. After all, the person who decided whether you could stay or not was still the teacher who had a spot for the graduate entrance examination. If the teacher decided on you, you would pass regardless of your score. Therefore, many people had already decided before the second round. When the time came, the second round was just a formality. This was a semi-public internal rule, and many universities were like this. Zheng Tan only knew about it when he heard Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma's discussion. As for the beef jerky guy, Jiao Pa seemed to have already decided on him. Otherwise, he would not have let him come over to familiarize himself with the laboratory. At this moment, the big guy was laughing and chatting with the others. His hands were not careless at all, and his knife skills were very sharp. After the dissection, the tweezers could accurately find the part to be sampled. Su Chu's score for the first round was not high. Under normal circumstances, people like this were more likely to be eliminated in the second round. However, Su Chu was now standing in the laboratory to study under the instructions of Associate Professor Jiao. This meant that this person had already been decided. He would officially become a member of the university in September. The other senior graduate students in the university also understood the significance of this. Therefore, they were very willing to accept this prospective junior. In the past 2 days, the big guy often helped some of the seniors in the university carry things and helped the seniors take samples. Therefore, he was quite popular. As for the results, hee. So what if you came in first in the second round? Those who had experienced it before knew that once you entered the university, you would only look at the published articles and the impact factor of the articles. Everything else was **T. There were so many classes in the first year of postgraduate studies. As long as you skipped classes to do experiments in the laboratory, your respective supervisors would be happy. Some of the more easygoing supervisors would even help cover up for you, approve leave requests, and so on. When Exian first entered the university, her score was not even in the top 10. But now? Now, when the famous people of this year were mentioned, who would dare to ignore such a person? Exian's name was still hanging on the university's annual honor list. As for the top 10 of the exam results, how many people still remembered them now? When others asked about Su Chu, when they heard that he was Exian's junior, Associate Professor Jiao's subordinate, their attitude became much better, at least on the surface. Senior, the kidney has been extracted. Su Chu shouted. The senior that Su Chu called was not Exian. The other seniors in the university all called him senior. The difference was that Exian was Su Chu's direct senior. They belonged to the same supervisor. However, they usually addressed each other in the same way. There was no distinction between direct and collateral relatives. The senior who wanted to take a sample was talking to someone at the moment. The person next to him heard and said with a smile, "Hey, your kidney has been extracted." Several other people who were taking samples also jeered with Su Chu, "Senior, your kidney." The senior held a pair of tweezers and pointed at Su Chu, who was the biggest among them, and said, "If you jeer again, I'll cut open your body and take your kidney too." Su Chu was obviously familiar with them. He said cheekily, come on, senior, take it. Take mine." At this time, Exian was about to step in with the documents in her hand. She was followed by a few undergraduates. Before they entered the laboratory, they heard Su Chu's cheeky words. The expressions on the faces of the undergraduates were quite subtle. Exian wanted to cover her face. "Boss Jiao, can we return the goods?" Jing Tan squatted on the tree outside and laughed. This Su Chu was really a fool. Chapter 54. Jing Tan had an impression of this person. Jing Tan had seen him a few times when he came here. Jing Tan had heard people call him Professor Ren. This Professor Ren was one of the young returnees that the institute had introduced last year. He was very popular among the students, especially the female students. Professor Ren was only in his early 30s, but his file was already glorious. He also had the halo of a returnee. Otherwise, the institute would not have recruited him. Speaking of which, Professor Ren and Jiao Pa's research was in the same direction. To some extent, they were competitors. However, Professor Ren was already a full professor, while Jiao Pa was still an associate professor. The difference was not small. Professor Ren had a London accent when he spoke English. Coupled with his good looks and his pretentious words and deeds, he was also one of the people that the students talked about in private. However, Jing Tan had always felt that this person was too fake. Just looking at him made him uncomfortable. In the few times that he had met him, Jing Tan knew that this person always had a kind smile when facing students, teachers, and leaders. He looked very gentlemanly. Many female students praised Professor Ren behind his back for being very gentlemanly. However, Jing Tan felt that every time this person looked at him, there was an indescribable malice. He originally thought that this person did not like cats and treated all cats this way. However, Jing Tan later rejected this idea. Even if this person did not like other cats, he would not have such malice. When this person faced cats, he removed his usual disguise. The smile in his eyes was cold. Therefore, Jingtan felt very uncomfortable when he saw the smile on this person's face. He always felt that this person was up to no good. "Hello, Professor Ren." A few students passed by and greeted the person. Professor Ren also responded with a smile. Jingtan, who was squatting on a tree and watching this scene, curled his lips. Sure enough, this person looked at others differently than he did himself. What AF * king hypocrite. Jingtan tried his best to recall and was sure that he had never interacted with this person before. The professor had a house outside the university and did not live in the family compound. Usually, when Jingtan came to the biology building, he would just squat outside occasionally or climb into the Jiao Pa's office to sleep. After that, he had nothing else to do. Many of the teachers in the school knew that Associate Professor Jiao had a black cat at home. They often saw the Associate Professor Jiao using his small electric scooter to carry his cat home. In addition, Jingtan did not cause any trouble when he came here. He was very well behaved, so some of the teachers and students would occasionally take the initiative to call him Black Charcoal, and would not throw stones to chase him away. Only Professor Ren looked like he wanted to kill him. "I didn't steal your wife, so why are you looking at me like that?" Jingtan was deep in thought when he suddenly heard someone calling him. He turned his head to look. "Black Charcoal, I didn't expect you to be here." The person who came was Zhao Lu, the daughter of the director of the Changwei Group, Zhao Zhang. During the Chinese New Year, although Director Zhao and Zhao Lu did not come over personally, they sent people over to give their New Year's greetings and gifts. After all, Director Zhao had too many things to do, and Zhao Lu, as the daughter of the Changwei Group, definitely had some necessary social activities. Both of them were busy people. The Jiao family did not lack snacks or fruits, and Jiao Ma did not need to buy her own cosmetics anymore. Every few days, Zhao Lu would send people over to deliver things. Today was the same. Zhao Lu happened to be free for the next 2 days. She did not have classes in the afternoon, so she bought some things and went to the Jiao family. In the end, only Jiao Ma and a few of her colleagues were in the Jiao family. Zhao Lu did not see Jingtan, so she decided to go to the Jiao Pa to ask about Jingtan's recent situation and Jiao Pa and Yuanzi's company. Mr. and Mrs. Jiao didn't disclose Zhao Li's identity to the public. They only said that he was a friend's child. However, Mrs. Jiao's colleagues were still confused when they saw Zhao Lu carrying so many snacks and some imported cosmetics for Mrs. Jiao. However, since the host didn't want to talk about it, they didn't ask. Zhao Lu did not expect to see Jingtan outside the Institute of Biological Sciences. But every time she saw Jingtan, Zhao Lu was happy. At this time, she also noticed the person standing not far away. She knew that he was Associate Professor Jiao's teacher, but she was not familiar with him. So, she just greeted him casually. Professor Ren smiled warmly. "You're not from our department, right?" "Yes, I'm just here to look for someone." "Who are you looking for? Do you need help?" "No, thank you." Zhao Lu maintained a polite smile, but there was a sense of alienation in her smile. After Professor Ren walked into the building and disappeared, Zhao Li's smile faded. She frowned and looked at Jingtan, who was squatting on the tree. "Did you offend him?" "How the F***ck would I know?" Jingtan pulled his ears, jumped down from the tree, and stretched. "Let's go and look for Professor Jiao." Zhao Lu took out a cloth bag from her bag. The name of a snack brand was printed on it. Zhao Lu had always folded the bag and put it in her bag in case of emergencies. She did not expect to use it now. Jingtan looked at the bag that Zhao Lu opened, shook its whiskers, and jumped into the bag. Zhao Lu felt that her hand was heavy, and she almost lost her grip on the bag. "Did you get fatter?" Zhao Lu smiled. Jingtan looked at itself. It could not be, right? Although it was not exercising properly, it was not fat. It was clearly strong. 2 days ago, when it went to Xiaoguo's place to shoot the advertisement, Xiaogua even praised it. It said that the other cats in the shop were all fat, but only Jingtan was strong. Xiaogua also wanted the cats in his shop to exercise more. Spring was coming, and they needed to exercise. Regardless of what Jingtan thought, Zhao Lu still carried the bag into the Institute of Biological Sciences and walked towards Jiao Pa's office. The Jiao Pa was searching for documents in front of the computer. Hearing the knock on the door, she said, "Come in." Seeing Zhao Lu come in, the Jiao Pa quickly stood up to greet her. She pulled a clean chair for Zhao Lu. The other chairs were not cleaned yet. Miss Zhao was not like Su Chu and Xian. The Jiao Pa had to be careful. After inviting Zhao Lu to sit down, the Jiao Pa saw Jingtan coming out of the bag. She did not pay much attention to it. Her cat was a regular here, so there was no need to say anything. Zhao Lu and Associate Professor Jiao talked about some things, including the recent progress of their company. Changwei Group and Associate Professor Jiao's company did not have much interaction, so they were not competitors. Zhao Lu was very willing to help. While they were talking, Jingtan lay on the small chair with her eyes closed and ears perked up to listen to the content of their conversation. Now, Jiao Pa and Yuanzi's company had a firm foothold and was developing well. Graduation season was coming, and many graduates had already started to look for jobs. Recently, Yuanzi had been poaching people from various universities. What they lacked now was talent. "Oh right, Professor Jiao, how much do you know about Professor Ren Chong?" Zhao Lu suddenly asked. When Zhao Lu entered the building, she saw the introduction of the professors on the first floor of the Institute of Biological Sciences. She knew that the professor was the overseas returnee that the institute had introduced. In order to show that the institute valued these overseas returnee professors, they had specially set up a special column to introduce them. It had been hanging in the lobby of the first floor all this time. "Professor Ren?" The Jiao Pa was surprised that Zhao Lu would ask about him. Not much. The Jiao Pa told Zhao Lu and Jingtan about what they knew about Professor Ren. Zhao Lu and Zhao Lu were puzzled. It did not sound like they had any grudges. "Why?" "Miss Zhao, are you interested in Professor Ren?" "Professor Ren is very popular among the girls in our institute." The Jiao Pa joked. Zhao Lu did not laugh. After all, she was the daughter of the head of Changwei Group. She was very sensitive to certain things. Zhao Lu shook her head and said, "I saw Professor Ren downstairs just now." Black charcoal was on the tree. Professor Ren's attitude towards black charcoal didn't seem to be very good. Hearing this, the Jiao Pa looked at Jingtan and asked, "Did you offend him?" Jingtan glanced at the Jiao Pa. "I really don't know how I offended him." The Jiao Pa could not think of a reason at the moment, but he still thanked Zhao Lu for her reminder. After Zhao Lu left, the Jiao Pa poked Jingtan and said, "Next time you see Professor Ren, stay away from him. He is not as kind as he looks. You should be careful not to be dragged to the laboratory table and dissected by him." Jingtan felt a chill down his spine. After hearing the Jiao Pa's words and recalling the look in Professor Ren's eyes, he could not tell if that was what Professor Ren meant. For the sake of his life, Jingtan decided to listen to the Jiao Pa and stay away from that hypocritical Professor Ren. At around 6 p.m., the Jiao Pa took Jingtan home after settling the matter. As usual, Jingtan squatted in the basket of the Jiao Pa's small electric car. At this time, many teachers were off work and going home, so there were more cars at the intersection. When they arrived at an intersection, there were a few cars in front of them. The Jiao Pa temporarily stopped and waited. While they were waiting, a silver-gray private car stopped next to the Jiao Pa's small electric car. It seemed like it was also waiting for the cars at the intersection to turn. The windows of the silver-gray car were rolled down, revealing the person in the driver's seat. Professor Ren. Since the Jiao Pa saw Professor Ren, he could not pretend that he did not see him, so he greeted him. Professor Ren, who was in the driver's seat, smiled and nodded. His gaze swept across Jingtan, who was squatting in the basket. At this time, the cars in front of them had finished turning. The silver-gray car next to them closed its windows and slowly drove away. The Jiao Pa was riding on the small electric car. He felt strange. He noticed that Zhao Lu was right. There was something wrong with Professor Ren. Associate Professor Jiao knew that Professor Ren was hostile towards him. The institute had received a quota to encourage and support young teachers. In the end, they chose Professor Ren and the Jiao Pa. In terms of qualifications, Professor Ren was obviously more qualified. After all, he had the word righteous. However, after a discussion among the leaders of the institute, they decided on the Jiao Pa. Because of this, when the Jiao Pa saw Professor Ren in the institute, he felt that Professor Ren's smile was fake and hostile. In that brief glance, the Jiao Pa felt that Ren Chong was even more hostile towards him. There was something else hidden in the hostility, but the Jiao Pa could not figure out the reason. No matter what, it was better not to let his cat come to the institute in the future. Who knew if Ren Chong was a psychopath? On the other hand, Ren Chong drove back to the villa he bought. After he returned to his house, he picked up his phone and dialed a number. The call was connected after a while. "How's the investigation going?" Ren Chong asked. The person on the other end of the phone talked to Ren Chong for about 5 minutes. During these 5 minutes, Ren Chong did not speak, but his expression was very bad. If the students of the Institute of Biological Sciences saw Professor Ren at this moment, their jaws would definitely drop. No one would have thought that the usually smiling and gentlemanly Professor Ren would have such a gloomy and fierce expression. Although his expression was very bad, his tone was the same as before. After the person on the other end finished speaking, Ren Chong said, "I understand. Continue to investigate." After hanging up the phone, Ren Chong sat on the sofa and thought about some of the things that had happened after he returned to China. Generally speaking, it was quite smooth, until he met Jiao Mingsheng. Jiao Mingsheng was just a local associate professor. He had never been abroad, so he did not know the limits of his abilities. Did he really think that he was so great after being praised by those students who did not know anything? Humph. In terms of value, how could a country bumpkin like Jiao Mingsheng compare to him? Those old guys in the institute and the few people in the university who made the decisions were really blind. From the moment he lost his place, Ren Chong knew that his obstacle had appeared. Before he returned to China, Ren Chong had met a few people at a banquet. One of them had learned some divination. Ren Chong had never believed in divination, so he did not take the person's words to heart. After arriving at Tsinghua University, not long after he lost his place, he happened to see Associate Professor Jiao driving his black cat home. At that moment, Ren Chong remembered what the person at the banquet had said. "If you return to China to develop your career, pay attention to the cat. The biggest obstacle in your way might be the cat." If the biggest obstacle was a human, Ren Chong would have believed it. However, if it was a cat, Ren Chong would not have believed it even if he was beaten to death. Not only Ren Chong, but the people around him also did not believe it. Even the person who did the divination had some doubts about the results of his divination. Later on, he even apologized and said that it might be because he was not good enough and had not learned for long. Everyone was just playing around and did not take it too seriously. But now, Ren Chong had to take it seriously. Based on the information he had just learned, Ren Chong felt that it was hard to imagine. No wonder so many people said that the black cat was evil. Yi He, the dean of the School of Physics and the wife of the principal, who was known as Lord Buddha, Lan Tiesu, an old professor who had retired from the School of Biological Sciences but still had influence, the famous chairman of the Changwei Group and his daughter Zhao Lu. These people took care of Jiao Mingsheng openly and secretly. Even if they did not, no one knew if they were secretly involved. Sometimes, a word from these people was worth a few years or even decades of hard work. And the one who played an important role in this was only a cat that looked very ordinary. Although they did not find out how the cat was connected to these people, the fact was that it was undeniable. This was only what they had found so far. As for those who had not been found, how many people were connected to the cat? How many people could support Jiao Mingsheng? Ren Chong never thought that he would lose to a country bumpkin like Jiao Mingsheng. He heard that the institute had already arranged for Jiao Mingsheng to go abroad. The fastest he could go abroad was a year. When he came back a year later, the associate on Jiao Mingxing's head would be removed. Ren Chong did not want Jiao Mingxing to go so smoothly. Now, the cat was like a thorn in Ren Chong's throat. Ren Chong could not wait to pull it out. Some things were better removed as soon as possible. Originally, Ren Chong was going to take care of it himself, but he still underestimated the cat's influence. He did not expect that a cat would involve so many people. Therefore, to be on the safe side, Ren Chong was not going to get involved and let others do it for him. When dealing with cats, there were always professionals. Chapter 55. Zheng Tan felt like he was being watched for the past 2 days. He wasn't sure who was watching him, but the feeling was very strong. Because of Jiao Pa's instructions, Zheng Tan didn't go to the biology building to avoid Ren Baqian. Not only that, but he also rarely left the courtyard at night. He only went out during the day when he couldn't hold it in. Usually, he would wait for the 2 children at the entrance of Fu Elementary School around 5 p.m. and then go home together. Even if he went out at night, he would only take a walk in the courtyard. He wouldn't go out of the courtyard, let alone to the alley in the old building. There were a lot of people during the day, so the campus was full of people. After all, it wasn't a closed school, so the checks on people entering and leaving the school weren't that strict. However, Zheng Tan couldn't relax until he found out why he was being watched. On this day, Zheng Tan found a big sycamore tree not far from the Dong family courtyard and climbed up to take a nap. Sure enough, it was safer to be high up, and the view was wider. Zheng Tan yawned. He thought too much last night and didn't sleep well, so he had to catch up on sleep during the day. Jiao Ma and a few colleagues recently had a teaching project to collaborate on. In a few months, Jiao Yuan would be entering junior high school. Jiao Ma also had to show her presence among the junior high school teachers. When the time came, Jiao Yuan would be able to gain more benefits from the school. The other families had elderly people or children who hadn't gone to kindergarten, so it wasn't convenient to visit them. In the end, they settled on Jiao family. Therefore, Zheng Tan wandered outside every day during the day. When he was tired, he would climb up a tree and sleep. If it rained, he would go to De Pang's house. After all, Zheng Tan didn't want to stay at home and face those junior high school teachers. Zheng Tan was drowsily dozing off when the feeling of being watched came again. Zheng Tan moved his ears, but he didn't hear any strange sounds. There were only students walking around. Not far away, there was a cleaner sweeping the floor. From time to time, there were cars passing by. Not far from here, there was a sports field. Occasionally, there would be some cheering from there. These were all very common sounds, and Zheng Tan was already used to it. However, the feeling of being watched made Zheng Tan restless. Thus, Zheng Tan opened his eyes and scanned the area below the tree. He still didn't find anyone suspicious. However, Zheng Tan was more careful this time. He tried his best to remember those who were walking slowly or sitting on the benches and grass, as well as those who didn't move quickly. If the other party wanted to keep an eye on them, they would definitely not move quickly. Coming down from the tree, Zheng Tan came to a cafeteria near the teaching area of the school. After looking around, he found a big tree in the north corner of the cafeteria and jumped onto it. With his back facing the road, he continued to lie down and sleep. After a while, when the feeling of being watched rose again, Zheng Tan narrowed his eyes and looked at the cafeteria across from him. The reason why Zheng Tan chose this cafeteria and the tree in the north corner was because of the SLR glass in the north corner of the second floor. Because there was an office in the corner of the second floor, it was renovated with SLR glass. Only the inside could see the outside. If one looked from outside the cafeteria, it could be used as a mirror. Zheng Tan looked at the reflection of the glass and observed the people inside. Then, he compared them with the people he remembered. Finally, Zheng Tan's gaze fell on a seemingly ordinary student. The student was carrying a backpack and holding a book in his hand. He slowly walked towards the cafeteria. During this process, he looked at where Zheng Tan was every 2 steps. Finally, he came to the grass in front of the cafeteria and sat down, spreading out his book. Before Jingtan came over, this person was reading on the grass not far from the sycamore tree that Jingtan was under. There were many students reading on the grass like this. When Jingtan opened his eyes and looked over, he also had his head down, so Jingtan didn't notice him. After thinking about it, Jingtan got up and stretched. Then, he looked around casually. Sure enough, that person lowered his head again. Jingtan lay down and continued to sleep facing the hall, but his eyes were looking at the SLR glass in the cafeteria. Just as Jingtan guessed, that person raised his head and looked in Jingtan's direction again. And every few seconds, he would look over here. Jingtan was puzzled. Who was this person? Why was he spying on him? Moreover, even if he was spying on him, the target was only a cat. Was there a need to be so cautious? Jingtan couldn't understand. Could it be that he was too famous in the advertisement and someone wanted to take him away? That was how it was on TV. Otherwise, why would a cat with no value be spied on like this? Since he had found a suspect, Jingtan was going to go against him. Jingtan was very regular every day. In the morning, he came out with the children, walked around, and came to the tree north of the cafeteria to sleep. At the same time, he was also spying on that person. At noon, he would go home for lunch and take a nap. In the afternoon, he would come out with the two children, jump on the same tree, and continue to spy on him. Sometimes, he was afraid of being discovered, so Jingtan would change places. Some of the supermarkets and snack shops in the school also had this kind of SLR glass. It wasn't that Jingtan was overly cautious. It was just that the other person's behavior of spying on a cat made Jingtan feel uneasy. No matter what, it was better to be careful. A week later, Jingtan found that the person was gone. The feeling of being spied on also disappeared. No more spying. Or could it be that there was a next step? Jingtan's doubts only lasted for one day. The next night, after dinner, Jingtan and Jiaoma went out together. Jiaoma went to find friends to dance and exercise. Jingtan walked around the courtyard. Sometimes, when he was bored, he would play with the dogs in the courtyard. Huang and Sheriff were both locked up at home. Huang had been castrated, so he might be quieter. However, Sheriff couldn't stay idle. When he was first locked up at home, he kept barking. However, he had someone at home to play with him, so he gradually stopped barking. During the day, he would occasionally be let out to play, but he was absolutely not allowed to go out at night. Therefore, if Jingtan wanted to find a cat to walk with him, he could only find Depang. However, this fat man always squatted on his balcony and rarely came out to walk. After playing with Zhuang, Jingtan walked around the courtyard in boredom. It was almost 8:30. Jiao Ma and her friends would return from their dance party at 9 o'clock. Jiao Pa was at home today. Jiao Yuan's homework included dictation. After the dictation, Jiao Pa still had to sign, so Jiao Pa didn't go out that night. Therefore, Jingtan planned to wait for Jiao Ma to come back and follow her upstairs. As he walked, Jingtan suddenly heard the sound of wings flapping. Moving his ears, Jingtan looked in the direction of the sound. It was close to the courtyard wall and was considered a remote place in the courtyard. There were some osmanthus trees and wintersweet trees planted there to beautify and decorate the courtyard. However, Jingtan and his friends didn't usually play there. After all, there were too few trees here and the trunks were thin. It wasn't fun to sharpen one's claws and climb a tree. Compared to the small forest next to the family courtyard, this place was much more boring. Therefore, Jingtan and Huang preferred to walk a few more steps to the small forest outside the courtyard to play. However, Jingtan looked in the direction of the sound of wings flapping. It was a bit strange. Was it a bird? If it were other cats, they would definitely go in that direction. Cats didn't hunt for food. Hunting was their nature. If they heard the sound of birds, they would definitely go over. However, Jingtan was different. Jingtan wasn't interested in catching birds at all. He turned around and prepared to leave. After taking 2 steps back, Jingtan heard a small sound again. It sounded like someone sighing in exasperation. Although the sound was deliberately lowered, Jingtan still heard it. As Jingtan walked, he pretended to play with the branches and glanced at the courtyard wall from the corner of his eyes. The street lamp was more than 10 meters away and could only illuminate the road. It was still very dark on the side of the tree, but Jingtan still noticed the head on the courtyard wall with the advantage of being a cat. Something was wrong. After Jingtan pretended to scratch the branches twice, he heard the cage flapping a few more times. Jingtan took the opportunity to go over and see what was going on. Although he was curious, Jingtan still paid attention to the movements around him. He didn't want to get hit for no reason. The trees here were all about 3 or 4 meters tall. Although there weren't many, they were quite dense. From the surroundings, it was impossible to see what was going on under the trees. The flapping sound came from under the osmanthus trees. As he approached the osmanthus trees, Jingtan smelled the scent of birds and other smells. The flapping sound of wings was accompanied by the sound of metal colliding. It was just like when Jingtan saw the cage used to catch mice in Xiao Chu's house. When Xiao Chu patted the mouse cage, it was similar to this sound. Cage? Cat catcher? Cat catcher, or specifically to catch him? Jingtan's heart was full of questions. Logically speaking, there should be fewer people catching cats at this time, not to mention that this was the family compound of the university. How could these people be so bold? Jingtan had already walked under the osmanthus trees. As he slowly approached, he saw the cage. There were some leaves on the cage for cover. One side of the cage was open. That was the opening of the cage. The cage was about 60 centimeters long and 20 centimeters wide. A sparrow could be seen fluttering inside the cage from time to time. Perhaps it had sensed Jingtan's approach, for the sparrow fluttered even more violently. However, since it was chained inside the cage, it couldn't get out at all. It could only flap its wings inside the cage. Sometimes, when it struggled too violently and shook too hard, its wings would hit the top of the cage and hit the cage. Sensing that the predator was getting closer and closer, it made a few frightened cries. When Jingtan approached the cage, Depang, who was squatting on the balcony on the first floor of the B family building, suddenly moved its ears and opened its eyes. It looked at the old lady in the room who was wearing reading glasses and fastening buttons. It made a low meow sound, like the warning sound other cats made when they encountered a threat, but it was a little different. After the old lady heard it, she stopped fastening the buttons and immediately put down the things in her hands. What's wrong? The old lady looked at Depang. Meow, the old lady frowned, then picked up the phone and called the guard. When she looked up again, Depang was gone. What the hell happened? The old lady whispered. She immediately put on her coat and took the stun baton, ready to see what happened. If it was just like last time when they encountered a thief, Depang wouldn't run out by himself, but this time, Jingtan stood 1 meter in front of the cage and didn't get any closer. He just stood there and looked at the cage. At the same time, he paid attention to the person who was leaning against the wall and looking over here. However, because the trees here were too dense, there were too many branches, and the branches were too lush. There was also a row of azaleas planted near the road, which blocked the view above and the side. However, Jingtan couldn't see that person, and that person certainly couldn't see Jingtan. Therefore, Jingtan was going to wait and see when that person couldn't help but climb over the wall. As he was thinking, Jingtan heard a meow sound. It was Depang, and it sounded like this guy was running over here. Whoosh! Depang had already jumped over the row of azaleas and came under the osmanthus tree. Seeing Jingtan standing in front of the cage, he rushed over and slapped Jingtan twice. Jingtan reacted quickly and took 2 steps back to avoid Depang's claws. Depang arched his back, and the hair on his back stood up. He lowered his ears and growled twice at Jingtan, then at the cage. Jingtan knew that Depang was warning him to stay away from the cage. Jingtan shook his tail and walked over, ignoring Depang's look of imminent disaster. He raised his paw and gently patted his head, then walked to the back of the cage, not facing the opening of the cage. Depang was still meowing and preparing to come over. Jingtan shook his tail, reached out his paw, and grabbed the cage. He lifted the cage and slammed it twice. Depang pulled his ears. Obviously, he didn't expect Jingtan to have such a reaction. After all, Depang wasn't human. Even if he was relatively smart, his thinking wasn't as good as a human's. If he were a human, he would definitely be shocked by Jingtan's reaction. Lifting the cage and slamming it directly wasn't something a cat could do. After slamming it twice, Jingtan looked at the cage. The door of the cage wasn't closed. It seemed that the mechanism inside hadn't been activated. The design was quite strict. Looking around, Jingtan bent his paw and hooked a thin branch. He then put the branch inside and touched a place inside the cage. Paw. When the door of the cage closed, there was almost no time for the cat to react. If a cat was playing with a sparrow inside, it definitely wouldn't react before the door closed. Depang pulled his ears again and wagged his tail. He seemed a little confused, but he didn't look like he was about to face a disaster like before. After the cage closed, Jingtan's attention was on the person on the wall. However, that person seemed to be more cautious and didn't immediately climb over the wall. Jingtan understood what had happened a few days ago. These people had been monitoring him for so long and even placed the cage here. They had probably figured out his pattern of movement, and their target was most likely him. "Awoo!" Jingtan roared twice at the top of his lungs. "I don't believe that you can hold back and not move before I yell at the people in the yard." Hearing Jingtan's roar, Depang also meowed loudly. In the family building, many people might not have heard it clearly, but the pets could hear it clearly. Huang and the sheriff could hear their two companions' cries, so they followed suit. The other dogs barked happily, especially the bulldog, Zhuangzhuang. It barked and scratched the iron door with all its might. For a moment, the yard was filled with cats and dogs barking. The last time something like this happened was when they were catching a thief. Obviously, after that experience, the first thought that came to the people's minds when they heard the noise was, someone is here to steal again. Old Man Yen threw down the newspaper in his hand and hurried downstairs to open the door for Niu Zhuangzhuang. "Quick, catch the thief." Before the door was fully opened, Niu Zhuangzhuang couldn't wait to squeeze out and run towards Jingtan and the others. Old Man Li didn't tie up his big dog. Seeing Old Man Yan's Zhuangzhuang run out, Old Man Li untied the dog leash on Xiao Hua's neck and watched his dog run away with Niu Zhuangzhuang. The Saint Bernard was so big, but it still had to perform at critical moments. It couldn't just be big and not do anything. Other than these two, Sahara was also released by its owner. This guy was like on steroids again. It didn't care what its owner said behind it and kept running in the direction of Jingtan and Depang. As for the other people's small dogs like Chihuahuas, Pekingese, and Corgi, they weren't released. Regardless of whether they could catch the thief or not, even if they could, with the two big dogs and Niu Zhuangzhuang's ferocious lead the charge, the few small dogs would probably be accidentally hurt. On the other side, the person who had been watching the cat cages from the yard wall almost spat out blood when he heard the two cats roaring at the top of their lungs. F***ck, why did these cats suddenly roar so loudly? Chapter 56. What's going on? The Jiao Yuan stopped doing his homework. He was halfway through his dictation when he heard the commotion outside. Just like everyone else, the Jiao Yuan thought of the thief incident. He put down his pen and looked around. His cat wasn't back yet. The Jiao Pa put down his 6th grade language textbook and walked to the window to take a look. Young adults came out of the surrounding buildings one after another. Some curious children leaned against their windows or balconies to look outside. Soon, they were pulled into the house by their parents. "Sit down." The Jiao Pa called the Jiao Yuan, who was leaning against the window, over. He took out his phone to ask the others and also called the old lady on the first floor. After all, people who lived on the first floor could get the news faster. After hanging up the phone, the Jiao Pa thought for a moment and walked out of the Jiao Yuan's room. He opened the door and saw Chu Xiangyang, who was sitting across from him, open the door and look over. "Hey, brother Jiao, did you hear that?" "Xiao Chu, you're just in time. I was going to look for you." 1 minute later. Chu Xiangyang sat on the sofa in the Jiao family's living room. The associate professor Jiao asked him to stay and look after the children. The associate professor Jiao quickly went downstairs. The commotion in the East Borough's family compound was too big, and the process from quiet to noisy was too short. The person who caught the cat did not expect things to develop like this. They had never encountered such a situation when they were catching cats in residential areas. After hearing the loud cat calls from the osmanthus tree, the catcher immediately jumped over the wall and ran to the cage. He didn't dare to delay. Besides, he already heard the dog barking coming this way. With a beautiful leap, the catcher jumped over the row of azaleas. He didn't slow down and directly ran to the osmanthus tree. But before he could see the position of the cage, four cat claws scratched at him. Depang's claws were frightening. Even though his strength was not as great as Jingtan's, he was ruthless and neat enough. Moreover, the places he scratched were close to the cat's eyes. If he had been a little stronger or his claws were a little longer, the cat catcher's eyes would probably have been blinded. Even if he wasn't blinded, there were several deep bloodstains from his eyebrows to his eyes and nose. Almost immediately, blood overflowed from the claw marks. Depang did not think about whether it had caught someone blind, or whether it would have to bear the consequences if it caught someone too badly. It had been trained to fight back when it was in danger. As for the trouble after that, someone would help it deal with it. It was the same for Jingtan. He scratched the same spot as Depang. As he controlled his strength, he would only cause temporary damage to that person's eyes and vision. Jingtan's scratches were much longer than Depang's, almost reaching his neck. At the same time, he took the opportunity to kick the man twice when he rushed up. He used a little more strength than an ordinary cat. Jingtan didn't want to expose too much. "Ah!" A scream was heard. It was not loud, but it was obviously from the pain that he couldn't suppress. The man covered his face. He rushed over too fast and didn't stop, so he directly hit an osmanthus tree. After the successful attack, Depang quickly moved away and looked at him from 10 meters away. Jingtan didn't hide. Seeing that the catcher didn't even want the cage, he hurriedly got up and prepared to go to the yard wall. He wasn't going to let the man escape. Even if he couldn't beat him down, there were other ways. The man's eyes were probably injured. In the dark environment, he couldn't see his surroundings clearly. He hit several trees and still couldn't get out. Seeing that the man's back was facing him, Jingtan rushed over, jumped up, and grabbed the man's pants. "Strip." It was a pity that the man was wearing jeans and a belt. Jingtan couldn't take it off. The man felt a scratch on his thigh. He didn't look carefully, turned around, and kicked hard. However, he didn't kick the cat. He tripped on a branch and fell on his back. The catcher didn't expect to catch a cat like this. The cat didn't enter the cage, but it was so bold to come up and scratch people. Didn't they say that domestic cats were more gentle? Most of the cats he had caught in the community before didn't have such bad tempers. The cat he was facing now didn't give up after scratching him once. It scratched him a second time. If he had been wearing sweatpants, his pants would have been taken off. However, the situation didn't allow the catcher to think too much. He had to run away quickly. However, before he could get up, he felt a sharp pain in his butt. Depang and Jingtan, who were squatting next to him, pulled their ears together. "Niu Zhuangzhuang, you are so *king awesome." Niu Zhuangzhuang had bitten people before. It was the same this time. It didn't think about the danger at all. It rushed up and bit him. This time, Niu Zhuangzhuang didn't bite his calf. Maybe it felt that its mouth had become bigger or for some other reason, but this time, it bit his butt. Since Niu Zhuangzhuang was here, Flowery and Sahara arrived soon. Flowery didn't bite people, but it could bite other things. Seeing that its companions had bitten, it also found something to bite. The catcher was wearing clothes with a hat. Flowery bit the hat on the man's clothes and dragged it backward. As it dragged, it shook its head and made a low growl. Originally, Flowery was just playing with toys. However, the catcher raised his hand to slap the big dog because the hat on his clothes was bitten. However, this slap made Flowery angry. It had a good temper, but it didn't mean that it wouldn't get angry. In addition, there were two companions next to it, so it gradually became serious. It used more strength, and its tearing action was much more violent than before. As Flowery tore and swayed, the catcher was also pulled to the side. He was already dizzy, and now, he was even dizzier. Zheng Tan thought of a movie he had seen before. It was called Cujo. In that movie, Saint Bernard dogs were once the symbol of terror. After coming back to his senses, Zheng Tan looked at the situation again. The funny thing was that Flowery was biting the man's hat, and Sahara was biting the man's pants. The two dogs were pulling in opposite directions. Moreover, Niu Zhuangzhuang was biting in the middle. It had to be said that the catcher was really unlucky. The catcher was feeling terrible. His face was still burning, and there was a dog biting his butt. There were two dogs eyeing him from head to toe. He was getting dizzier and dizzier. After he took a breath, he didn't bother to fight with the big dog. He reached into his pocket and searched. He searched. There was nothing. He searched again. There was still nothing. He searched again. There was still nothing. Where was the knife? Zheng Tan looked at the man's movements and knew what he was looking for. However, when the man fell and Niu Zhuangzhuang rushed up to bite him, Zheng Tan took the opportunity to take the knife out of the man's pocket and threw it to the side. He didn't want the man to hurt the three dogs with the knife. The people in the courtyard weren't slow either. They quickly arrived. The first to arrive was the guard uncle. The guards in charge of this area were a few steps behind him. The guard uncle got to work quickly after he received the old lady's call. He was a retired soldier. Although his relatives had helped, it was mainly because of the old lady that he was able to come here to do this leisurely job. Her son had also helped arrange it, so he would often help the old lady a little. When the old lady called to explain the situation, he immediately notified the school's security office. He also came out with a flashlight and a shirt. He couldn't let the staff in the courtyard take the risk. However, the guard uncle was helpless when he arrived. The three dogs were too engrossed, and their tempers were obviously aroused. He would definitely be implicated if he went up rashly. Scratching his head, the guard uncle looked at the two cats squatting next to him. What should we do? Zheng Tan glanced at him, then walked over to the cat cage. The guard uncle shone the flashlight at Zheng Tan and quickly recognized the use of the cage. He walked over and took the cage out. He looked at the sparrows that hadn't moved much. He also looked at some marks on the cage. Obviously, many cats had been caught in this cage. Wow, you've got guts. You actually came to the courtyard to trap cats. The guard uncle looked back at Depang, who was squatting on the side of the road as if it had nothing to do with him, and then looked at the cat catcher who was being bullied by the three dogs. He curled his lips. Coming here to trap cats, wasn't he looking for death? Even if the laws in this area weren't perfect in our country, since he was caught, he definitely wouldn't be let off easily. Moreover, the fat dragonly was involved. A few people from the compound came over and used their flashlights to look at the situation over there. They also heard the guard talk about the use of the cage, so they didn't go up to help the cat catcher. They just stood at the side and watched, chatting with the guard. It was the first time they had seen a cage used to catch cats, so they were curious. People like this who steal cats usually sleep during the day and start stealing cats around midnight. From midnight to 5 or 6 in the morning, they can steal 10 to 20 cats. Didn't you say that a lot of people lost their cats a while ago? It's all done by these people. But it's strange. This person looks like an experienced cat thief. He actually came here to steal cats, and at 8 or 9 in the morning. The guard uncle shook his head as he spoke. Zheng Tan squatted not far away and listened to their conversation. He also wanted to know something about this. After all, before he became a cat, he didn't care about these things at all. But now, he had no choice. After all, it was related to his life. Are they all stolen pet cats? Even if they're eaten, can't the merchants raise them? Chickens, pigs, and other livestock for eating, aren't there specialized factories to raise them? Why are they stealing house cats? A younger guy asked. The guard uncle smiled. Raise them? How is that possible? It's better to steal cats. It's faster and cheaper. Cats aren't like dogs. They're easy to catch. And these people have skills in trapping cats. They specialize in trapping big cats and let go of the small ones. They'll come back next year. Anyway, they don't have to spend their own money to raise cats. D*MN. Did that mean that the cats that were raised so painstakingly were raised for these people? Also, don't they often see stray cats? Catching stray cats is bad enough, but stealing house cats. The young man sighed. There aren't many stray cats. The market demand is high, so these people target domestic pet cats. Moreover, house cats are raised well and don't have diseases. They can be sold at a higher price. But the people who lose their cats are pitiful. A middle-aged teacher next to him also interrupted. That's right. After raising a cat for so long, they have feelings for it. Those who lose their cats will be sad for a long time. Wasn't that person before? After losing his cat, he couldn't eat or drink. Zheng Tan knew the person who lost his cat. He also lived in the East Courtyard, but that family's cat didn't play with Zheng Tan and the others. That cat once ran into the first floor of Building B and climbed over the balcony to steal Depang's food. It was severely taught a lesson by Depang. But during the new year, Zheng Tan heard that the cat had disappeared. He didn't think too much about it. Now that he thought about it, Zheng Tan sighed. How much does this cat sell for? The young man asked curiously. Not much, just a few dozen yuan. Native cats are similar, so it's sold cheaply. After the cats were caught, some of them were skinned and sent to fur markets in other places. As for the cat meat, they were sold to restaurants or barbecue stalls. Some of the barbecue and skewers at street stalls might have cat meat in them, and some other foods might also have cat meat in them. Many people didn't even know that they had eaten them. Some cats are directly thrown into boiling pots to burn to death. It's said that chopping off the head and feet can be passed off as rabbit meat or other meat. This is the fur and cat meat business. There are also cat catching organizations that do live cat business. After catching the cats, they're shipped to the south in truckloads. In the big cities, to get these truckloads of cats, they're all stolen house cats. No wonder Sister Ling kept her cat at home. I haven't seen her Huang recently. Right, are there many cat catching organizations? The young man asked. There are many. Why don't you catch these people? The guard uncle paused and said, there are more cat catching organizations than you think. They're all over the country. It's too complicated and involves too many things. Some people pull truckloads of cats to the south. Even if they're stopped halfway, they still have a license in their hands. There are always other legitimate reasons to avoid them. You can't catch them. Zheng Tan listened to their conversation and suddenly felt cold all over. Because he was now a cat, the feeling was even stronger. Connecting the conversation between the guard uncle and the few people, Zheng Tan knew that the cat that stole Depang's rations was lost and would never come back. The people in the courtyard gradually gathered here, and the people in the security office also rushed over. The 3 dogs were called back by their owners. As for the cat catcher, he was in quite a sorry state. His face was full of cat scratches, his trousers were torn, his buttocks were bleeding, and his clothes were torn into rags. But no one here sympathized with him. The woman who had just mentioned that the cat was lost was very emotional. She waved her hand and wanted to come over, but she was stopped by her husband. Under the osmanthus tree, the cat thief covered his face and lay there, blood still flowing from between his fingers. Soon, this person was taken away by the security office. But the people in the courtyard didn't stop discussing. Jing Tan saw the Jiao Pa and ran over. It was safer to be with family. De Pang was very excited when he saw the old lady. He rushed over and jumped on her. The old lady picked him up. Looking at the series of actions, it was obvious that she had done this kind of thing often. Jing Tan watched from the side and was very surprised. Damn, this guy was fine just now, but now he's scared. *T fatty, with your weight, can't you understand that the old lady is already so old? Feeling Jing Tan's gaze, De Pang raised his head, squinted his eyes, and shook his ears. He buried his head in the old lady's arms and continued to seek comfort. Every time he pretended to be pitiful, the old lady would give him more food after he went back. The Jiao Pa took Jing Tan and walked with the old lady to their building. As they walked, they listened to the old lady talk about how De Pang recognized the cat cage. De Pang has been trained. My son said that the cat's biggest enemy is that thing, so every time I go to his place, he will train De Pang to avoid all kinds of cat cages and other cat traps. Sigh, cat thieves nowadays are so wicked. Chapter 57. The news that someone had stolen a cat from the East Side family compound spread like wildfire. No one expected that someone would try to trap a cat on a university campus, and at 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening, not in the middle of the night. It had to be said that the person who had set the cat was very brave. For a time, all the residents of Chu Hua University, including the West Side family compound, tied up their cats at home at night. Even if they screamed until their throats were broken, they would not let them out. If they were annoyed, they would send them to Shaogua for sterilization. It was said that sterilized cats would not be so noisy. No matter what, it was better than running out and being trapped. If the cat was trapped, it would probably become someone else's meal. So these 2 days, Shaogua's pet center's business was very good. Even if some people did not want to perform surgery on their cats, they would run over to ask if there was any other way to keep their cats at home quietly. As for the cat thief who had been caught, the security guard found a motorcycle on the other side of the wall of the East Side family compound. There were several large woven bags on it. One of the bags had a few live sparrows in it. In addition, there was some food to lure the cat. Looking at these things, it was obvious that this person had done this many times. According to this person, he had only come over to trap a cat because he had heard the cats meowing. He had originally planned to go to a neighborhood not far from here. That was his main target. Jing Tan heard all this when he was talking to the Jiao Pa and the Jiao Ma. However, Jing Tan did not believe the cat thief's words at all. He felt that the person had come for him. It was too much of a coincidence. They had been carefully monitoring a cat, and now someone had come to steal the cat. Moreover, the person had come to the East Side family compound. Relatively speaking, there were not many cats in the East Side family compound. There were fewer cats than in some residential neighborhoods. Why would the person take the risk to come here at 8 or 9 o'clock to trap a cat? The time was just right when he usually went out. In the bedroom, the Jiao Pa was holding a textbook in his hand, but his attention was not on the book. He felt that something was wrong and was inexplicably uneasy. No matter what, he should not let his cat go out. Jing Tan and Jiao Pa had the same idea. Since there were many things that they were unsure of and had doubts about, they might as well just stay at home. Not to mention Jing Tan, even De Pang had been locked up at home for the past few days. They weren't even allowed to lie on the balcony. The old lady cherished De Pang. She was afraid that the cat that she had spent so much effort to raise would be taken away. After staying at home for a week, Jing Tan began to feel uncomfortable again. One morning, when Jiao Ma sent Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo out, Jing Tan followed them out. To be on the safe side, the Jiao Ma asked Zheng Tan to follow her all the way to the Jiao Ma Primary School affiliated to Renmin University of China. When the Jiao Ma Primary School affiliated to Renmin University of China, she wanted to go to the market. Of course, Zheng Tan wouldn't go with her. However, the Jiao Ma Primary School affiliated to Renmin University of China didn't want to let Zheng Tan wander around. Therefore, she told Zheng Tan to wait at the lawn in front of the school. Not long after the sun came out in the morning, the temperature had started to rise. Many flowers in the school had bloomed, and chirping birds were noisily shitting everywhere. The bell rang to signal the start of class. Students from the affiliated primary school and the affiliated primary school started their classes. The road became quiet again. Zheng Tan lay on a piece of landscape stone and yawned. Sure enough, he still needed to breathe in the fresh air occasionally. Before he could finish his yawn, Zheng Tan felt a sudden sense of crisis. It was similar to the situation when he was being watched a while ago, but this time, there was a strong sense of crisis. This was the first time Zheng Tan felt this way since he turned into a cat. He looked around vigilantly, and finally, his eyes fell on a young man in gray sportswear. The young man was carrying a backpack and wearing a mask. His hands were in his pockets, and he looked like an ordinary student. Due to the SARS incident last year, a lot of people wore masks when they went out. Although there weren't that many people wearing masks now, there were still some who did. Even those who rode electric scooters to work sometimes wore masks. The air in Chuhua City wasn't very good. Many places were under construction, so there was a lot of dust. Wearing a mask wouldn't be noticed. Although this person was wearing a mask, Zheng Tan still recognized him. This was the guy who was spying on him a while ago. Since he recognized him, Zheng Tan had to be alert. Seeing that the guy was walking towards him, Zheng Tan didn't want to confront him directly. There were too few people around, and it was really disadvantageous for him. However, just as Zheng Tan was about to run, he felt a pain on his back. Ouch! He didn't have the strength to scream. The numbness had begun to spread quickly throughout his body. His vision was blurred, and his consciousness was gradually losing control. Zheng Tan rolled down from the landscape stone. On the side with his back facing the person, Zheng Tan struggled to pull off the pet tag from his neck. At this moment, he was very glad that his cat tag rope was elastic. Even if he was caught, Zheng Tan wanted to let the Jiao Pa know that something happened to him here. After taking off the cat tag and throwing it at the bottom corner of the landscape stone, Zheng Tan tried his best to squeeze into the bushes on the other side. Unfortunately, the numbness was too strong. His limbs were already weak, and he fell to the ground after a few steps. There was also a needle in his back. F***CK. They actually used a tranquilizer gun to catch a cat. In a daze, Zheng Tan felt that someone was approaching. Then, one of his legs was grabbed and stuffed into a bag. Then, the surroundings were dark. The young man seemed to be nervous and in a hurry. When he saw someone passing by on a bicycle, he quickly ran over, stuffed the cat into his bag, and hurried away. He didn't notice the cat tag under the corner of the landscape stone. After buying groceries, Jiao Ma carried a few big bags in her hands. She also bought ribs. She was going to cook a big meal for everyone. However, when she came back, her cat was no longer on the lawn. Before she left, her cat was lying on the stone. Did it go to play? Black charcoal. After calling twice, Jiao Ma looked around the lawn. When she came to the back of the landscape stone, she found the cat tag that had fallen there. Jiao Ma asked around. No one paid attention to the situation here. However, a teacher in the teaching building of affiliated primary school said that when he came out of the office, he saw a person wearing a mask go to the lawn. However, from this angle, they couldn't see the lawn clearly. Jiao Ma didn't care about the groceries in her hands. Instead, she quickly took out her phone and called Jiao Pa based on her understanding of her cat. If it had been told to wait here, it wouldn't have left for no reason. Moreover, it had left the cat tag here. Her cat was so smart. Thinking about the cat incident a few days ago, Jiao Ma was very worried. Was it really taken away? In the teaching building, Jiao Pa was in class. He felt the phone in his pocket vibrate. He looked at the screen, frowned, took out his phone, and walked out of the professor's office. Usually, teachers weren't allowed to answer phone calls in class, except for emergencies. When Jiao Pa saw Jiao Ma's phone number, he knew it must be something urgent. Otherwise, she wouldn't have called him even though she knew he had classes in the morning. The students sitting in the classroom saw Associate Professor Jiao go out to answer a phone call. After a while, he came back in with a serious face. He turned off the projector and told everyone to study by themselves. Then, he left in a hurry. The young man who had caught Zheng Tan hurriedly walked out of Tsinghua University's campus. He was about to find a place to deal with the cat when the phone in his pocket rang. "Uncle, what's up?" "I'm leaving in an hour." "If you're leaving, come here quickly." The person on the other side of the phone seemed to be worried. "Why are you in such a hurry? Didn't you say you're leaving at night?" "No, it's an emergency." "Come here quickly." After that, the person on the other side of the phone hung up. The young man hesitated, gritted his teeth, and decided to leave first. He could deal with a cat any time. However, it might be a little troublesome to get the money. An hour later, the young man appeared in a warehouse in the suburbs. In front of the warehouse was a small truck. Next to the truck was a man in his 40s or 50s, smoking. After seeing the young man, the man said impatiently, "What took you so long?" "I did a job." The young man didn't say much. He took out his backpack and showed it to the man. The man took a deep puff and threw away the cigarette butt. He took the backpack and opened the zipper. He saw a black cat in the backpack. He lifted the cat by its legs and looked at it. "Not bad. I can sell it for a good price. The fur is not bad. I'm sure people will buy it when I get rid of it. What should I do with this cat? My employer told me to kill it, and I was about to throw it into the river when the time came." "Uncle, you called me. Why would you throw it away?" The man stared at the young man. "This cat is well fed. If we're lucky, we can sell it for a few hundred yuan with the meat and the shiny fur. It's not common to see pure black fur." "Okay." The young man agreed. Who wouldn't want to sell it for money? The man carried the cat into the truck and threw it into the cage. This medium-sized truck was filled with cages of cats. According to the cat's appearance and the price they could sell for, they were divided into several grades and kept in different cages. Outside the truck, there were some large cardboard boxes with some sundries inside. They were brought in by the people they helped, so they had more ways to make money. After throwing the cat into a cage on the upper level, the man closed the door of the truck, climbed into the driver's seat, and drove away. The young man sat in the passenger seat. He didn't have time to ask some questions before, so he held it in until now. "Uncle, why are you in such a hurry?" "I don't know what's going on these 2 days. Someone checked, and the fake IDs in the hands of a few of my fellows were found. Even the whole truck was detained. I'm afraid they'll investigate further. It's better to run away first." This time, he didn't catch too many cats. The cages in the truck weren't full yet. If it weren't for the urgent situation, he would have stayed here for a few more days. Even if there were no cat traps, he could still drug a few dogs. Yesterday, he saw a few big fat dogs. Investigate further? No way. It hasn't been like this in the past. The young man was surprised. Anyway, we don't plan to come to Tsinghua City for the next few months. The situation here is tense. I'm so king unlucky. This has never happened before. Didn't those people turn a blind eye to it? Why are they suddenly so serious now? The man complained as he drove. The young man in sportswear didn't care about his relatives' complaints. He took out his phone and started to make a call. He hadn't met the employer, but it didn't matter if he met the employer or not. "The cat is settled. When will you transfer the money to me?" the young man in sportswear asked. Is the cat dead? The person on the other side asked. It was shot with a tranquilizer gun. It's probably dead if it can't withstand it. Even if it can, it's useless. My uncle took it to the south and sold it to the market there. You don't have to worry about that. The person on the other side of the phone was silent and didn't speak. The young man thought that the other party didn't want to pay, so he was anxious. Chuhua City has been tense recently. You are also anxious. I risked being found out to help you. The tranquilizer gun cost a few thousand. Your deposit is all gone. You can't disappoint me. Don't worry. I promised you 30,000 yuan. I will transfer it to you later. Also, don't contact me in the future. After saying that, the person on the other side of the phone hung up. The young man listened to the beeping sound on the phone and cursed. What? That person wants to renege on the payment? The driver asked. Who knows? The young man sneered. Why did you buy a tranquilizer gun to trap a cat? The driver said disdainfully. I asked around. I heard that the cat has been trained. The employer also said that the cat is very smart. I was very careful even when I was monitoring it. The young man said and gradually changed the topic. He didn't say how much the employer had paid. In fact, he bought the tranquilizer gun secondhand from a friend. It was only a few hundred yuan. Even if the employer didn't pay, he still made a profit. The person who went to the eastern courtyard to trap the cat was contacted by the young man. He used that person to test the waters. If he managed to trap the cat, of course, it would be better. The young man could get rid of him with a few dozen yuan. But the results proved that the cat was not easy to catch. Coincidentally, a friend had a tranquilizer gun, so the young man bought it. But the cat didn't come out for the next few days. He couldn't find a chance to catch it. It had dragged on for too long. He had to be more aggressive. He didn't know if there were any cameras around. If there were, it would be best for him to hide in the south for a while. He actually used a tranquilizer gun to catch a cat. The young man didn't expect it to be like this. In the cabin of the medium-sized truck, Enchanting and a few cats were squeezed together in the cage at the top. Many of the cats in the cage had been drugged. They were groggy and didn't make any noise. Even if the cats were awake, they would only make a noise occasionally. They probably didn't have much energy left. Enchanting, who was in a coma, didn't know that because of his disappearance, there was a hurricane in Chuhua City. A large number of cat traffickers were arrested. That night, several trucks carrying live cats and dogs were detained. The Jiaopa used his connections to see a camera installed in the elementary school. It could vaguely see the lawn. Although the image wasn't clear, it was enough to confirm that his cat had been taken away. The Jiaopa asked some friends, Celestine, Tao, and the others to help. They looked everywhere for the cat. They searched the detained trucks and several places where cats were sold. When they saw a black cat, they sent it to a place and waited for the Jiaopa to identify it. Unfortunately, Enchanting wasn't among them. That night, many people couldn't sleep. At the same time, because of this incident, there were some conflicts of interest. There were all kinds of conflicts in the open and in the dark. Enchanting didn't know any of this. The amount of anesthetic used by the young man was quite heavy. If it were a normal cat, it probably wouldn't have been able to survive. Even if it did, it would have been in a coma for a few days. However, Enchanting was a special case. Enchanting woke up after a few hours. However, even if he woke up, he still didn't have any energy. He was surrounded by unfamiliar breaths and unfamiliar cats. Enchanting could feel their fear and confusion. He had to endure even if he was hungry or thirsty. A few cats were whispering, like they were whimpering. Enchanting looked at the dark cabin. The cage he was in was closer to the cabin door. There was wind coming in through the gap of the cabin door, which made Enchanting more awake. It was dark outside the gap of the door. How long was the night? Jing Tan lay in the cage, thinking about how to deal with the situation. However, after thinking about it, Jing Tan fell asleep again. Chapter 58. Jing Tan was woken up by a violent tremor, trampling, and cat meowing. The effects of the drug had not completely disappeared. When he opened his eyes, Jing Tan still felt like he was in a trance. He did not know where he was. He was not on the soft sofa of a Jiao family. He was surrounded by unfamiliar smells, and the air was filled with panic and anxiety. The yelling of people and the meowing of cats mixed together, giving Jing Tan a headache. Bang! Cages with cats were placed on the shelves. Jing Tan was stepped on by the other cats in the same cage. This time, he really woke up. He opened his eyes and looked around. It was a small room, filled with a foul smell and the smell of blood. Jing Tan could see some iron cages on the shelves opposite him, as well as a few simple cat cages made of wood and bamboo nailed together. His ears moved, and Jing Tan also heard a dog barking next door. The dog barked harder than the cat. Jing Tan sighed. His whole body was still weak, but he could stand up and move. The other cats in the same cage were all very strong. Some of them were even expensive cat breeds. Their fur was cleaner and shiny, and a few of them had collars and pet tags around their necks. They were all good-looking. As for Jing Tan waking up, the cats in the cages did not pay attention to him. Domestic cats, especially those that had been raised for a few years, seemed to have sensed what was waiting for them. Outside this room was a restaurant. The whole street was full of such restaurants. However, even if they had spirituality, they were not as good as humans. Even if they knew there was danger, they could not think of a way to save themselves. They could only bark. Maybe they still had a lucky mentality, hoping that their owner could hear them. Jing Tan looked around. Most of the cats in the cages were not stray cats. Even if their fur was dirty and there were no collars or tags around their necks, the eyes of stray cats were different from those of domestic cats. Jing Tan could tell. He looked at the cages again. The good thing was that the locks of the cages were not complicated. They were not small bronze locks that required keys. After all, there were many cages. If each cage had a big iron lock or a small bronze lock, it would be too troublesome. The cages made of bamboo or wood also had latch locks. A few cats stretched out their paws to pull at the locked parts of the cages, but after all, they were not very smart. Not every cat was specially trained like Depang. No matter how much they pulled, they could not open the cages. This was not like pulling at the windows of their own home. Also, it took a bit of strength to pull the latches. The latches were very tight, and could not be pulled by ordinary cats. For Jing Tan, this kind of thing, he did not know when the peddlers outside would come in. Logically speaking, since he had just finished counting, he wouldn't come in to take a look. However, he had to be careful as this matter concerned his life. There were no cameras installed in this place. Thinking about it, how could those people be willing to spend money to install cameras in this kind of broken place? Jing Tan perked up her ears and listened attentively. There were footsteps coming and going at the door, as well as voices. Jing Tan felt that it was familiar. When he was in a coma, he heard this sound. When the sound of footsteps faded away, Jing Tan pushed aside a cat that was waving its paws at the cage door. The cat had a bad temper. It bared its teeth at Jing Tan. After being slapped by Jing Tan, the cat was not very willing, but it obediently moved aside. Jing Tan came to the cage door and looked at the iron latch that was as thick as a person's thumb. It had to be turned at an angle to pull it out. He stretched his arm out of the cage. When he touched the iron latch, he bent his palm and hooked his paws on the iron latch handle. He turned the handle 90 degrees up and pulled it to the left. Because Jing Tan had slapped the cat that was blocking the cage door, the other cats in the cage kept a little distance from Jing Tan. So, after Jing Tan removed the latch, he pushed the cage open and slipped out. Before the other cats could squeeze in, he closed the cage again. It was not that Jing Tan did not want to save them, but Jing Tan needed to observe the surrounding situation first. If he let these fellows out, Jing Tan was afraid that he would alert the enemy and ruin his chance to escape. Seeing that Jing Tan had come out, the cats in the cage started a new round of meowing. A few cats also stretched their paws to hook the iron latch, but it was futile. Taking a deep breath, Jing Tan looked around. He ran to the door and jumped up to try the lock. It was locked. Obviously, it was impossible to get out through the door. In addition to the door, there was an open window in the small room. The wooden window frame was cracked and the paint was peeling. The original color could not be seen. The window was closed and the latch was inserted. It looked like it had not been opened for a long time. There was dust in the gaps, and the latch was rusty. There was a layer of stain on the glass. Only the middle part of the window could be seen. Jing Tan walked over from the shelf and leaned against the window to take a look. Outside the window was a narrow cement road. The house on this side and the house on the other side of the cement road were facing away from each other. Only the back door of the house led to this road. There were a few large trash cans on the cement road. They were all filled with garbage. Although a lot of it was in bags, he could still see some of the discarded remains and internal organs exposed from the bags. There were many flies flying on them. Even if he was mentally prepared, Jing Tan still could not help but feel a chill when he saw it. If he did not wake up and dragged on for a few hours, or a few days, would he end up like this? Would he be decapitated or skinned? But now was not the time to be emotional. Even if he had a lot of doubts about being caught, he had to suppress them and focus all his energy on escaping. Jing Tan moved the latch of the window. It had been too long since the window was opened, and the latch was rusty. Jing Tan's strength had not recovered, and it took a lot of effort to open the window. It seemed to be 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The sky was overcast, and it looked like it was going to rain. There was no one on the cement road. Jing Tan climbed out of the window. When he came out, he was going to push the window closed so that no one would notice anything strange. But after thinking about it, he did not close it. He would have to come back later to save himself the trouble. The house where the cats were kept was next to the house where the dogs were kept. Fortunately, the window of this house was open for ventilation. After all, dogs could not jump like cats. Even if they were released from the cage, they could not jump over the window. There was no one inside, only a cage of dogs barking and biting each other. Jing Tan opened the window and looked inside. Coincidentally, a large dog looked up at the window and saw Jing Tan. Woof! 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 Stop barking. Jing Tan pulled his ears. Dogs were a little different from cats. Some of the cages were crowded with several dogs, and some were bigger and fiercer dogs. Each cage held one dog. From small Pomeranians and Pekingese to big native dogs and German shepherds, there were all kinds. It was a little difficult to open the dog cages. It was not a problem with the lock. The cages here were basically the kind of latch type, and some were bayonet type. They were not difficult to open. There were a few low cages with a few native dogs squeezed in. The narrow cages made it difficult for them to stand up. They did not bark much, and their mental state was not very good. But Jing Tan did not dare to open the cages. Who knew if these dogs would bite him when they came out? There were also a few dogs barking happily. Looking at their eyes, it seemed like they wanted to rush up and bite him. What to do? Jing Tan looked around, and finally his eyes stopped on a thin iron rod in a shelf. The front end of the iron rod was sharpened, and there were bloodstains on it. There were some ropes and thin iron wires next to it. Jing Tan climbed into the house. The surrounding dogs made Jing Tan nervous. Many of the dogs had a murderous aura and were growling in their throats. They were probably thinking about how to bite Jing Tan. Jing Tan pulled out the thin iron rod and tied the thin iron wire to the iron rod. The iron wire formed a circle. Then he grabbed the iron rod with both hands and walked upright with 2 legs. Although it was a little difficult, he could walk slowly. On the shelf, there were some sticks and other things used for hitting. They were all bloody. Zheng Tan walked step by step. The pungent smell of blood almost made him vomit. Standing on the shelf, even if the cages were opened, the dogs could not do anything to Zheng Tan. They could not jump so high. Zheng Tan extended the thin iron rod downwards until it reached the latch of the cage. The iron wire tied to the top of the iron rod was hooked onto the latch. She lifted the iron rod, causing the latch to turn, and then pulled it to the side. With a click, the door of the cage opened. A few puppies ran out and scurried around looking for an exit. Zheng Tan did not care about them and continued to open the cages. The type with the bayonet was easier to handle. He poked it twice and it opened. In addition to the effort of lifting the iron rod, Zheng Tan was also familiar with opening a few cages. He opened the cages faster and faster. However, if someone opened the door and came in at this time, Zheng Tan would throw away the tools and leave. Escape was the first priority. After opening all the cages, Zheng Tan did not stay any longer. The dogs were barking too loudly. A few of the fiercer big dogs were showing signs of going crazy. The movement here was obviously easy to attract the attention of people outside. Out of the window, Zheng Tan went to the house where the cats were kept. He opened the cat cages one by one. The windows were open, and the cats escaped through the windows. When he opened the last cage, Zheng Tan heard someone shouting outside. Obviously, the escape of the cats had been discovered. Zheng Tan rushed out of the window. There were no shortcuts to escape. Even if the residents around were not restaurant owners, they would not be merciful to the cats. Zheng Tan did not dare hide there. He tried to run as far as he could. There was only one thought in his mind. Run away from this street. Run away from this area with signs like XX Hot Pot and XX Cat, Dog, and Rabbit Meat Restaurant everywhere. While Zheng Tan was busy escaping, the young man who caught Zheng Tan was talking to a man in his 50s. "Uncle Guan, you have gained quite a lot this time," the young man said as he passed a cigarette to the man. The man called Uncle Guan took the cigarette and lit it. He took 2 puffs and said, "It was just a small fight." Boring. Uncle Guan was quite famous in this area. He was one of the earliest people who had started this business. Some of the young people had learned their skills from Uncle Guan. Of course, he did not teach them for nothing, and they had to pay him back. The young man also learned from Uncle Guan, including how to use the tranquilizer gun. He had followed Uncle Guan to hunt dogs a few times, so he was quite familiar with the skills. He was a fast learner, and he had been doing this a lot in the past few years. He had earned quite a lot. Last year, during the SARS outbreak, he was at a low point, but now he was slowly recovering. He was busy earning money. "You can earn about 100,000 renminbi a year now, right?" Uncle Guan said. Although it was a question, it was very certain. He was very good at this. The young man smiled and did not answer directly. He took out something and showed it to Uncle Guan. "Tranquilizer gun?" Uncle Guan looked at it casually. "Not bad, but it is too small. Boring. It does not feel good to hold. This kind of syringe is not easy to get. Based on the dosage, are you shooting dogs or humans?" The young man smiled. "Cats." Uncle Guan raised his eyebrows. "You are quite capable. Using this to shoot cats." His tone was full of disdain. Uncle Guan had always thought that cats were dumb as hell. Their curious nature could kill them, so they were easy to catch. The young man did not mind Uncle Guan's sarcasm. "That cat is not easy to catch. If I was not in a hurry to come back, I would not have used this. This time, I followed my uncle to a few cities in the central region and got this tranquilizer gun. I also got a BMQ to play with." The young man told some truths and lies. As for how much he had earned from the last job, he did not say a word. If he did, he would have to show some respect. Uncle Guan snorted and did not take the young man's words seriously. He paused and said, "Tomorrow, I am going out to do a job. Are you interested?" "Where are you going?" the young man asked. Uncle Guan pointed to the west. The young man did not speak. Although he beat dogs to catch cats, and sometimes took a few jobs through middlemen, he had also beaten people up before. But, he had never poached before. After finishing the cigarette, the young man threw the butt on the ground and squashed it with the tip of his foot. "Okay. This time, I will follow Uncle Guan and gain some experience." Just as he finished, a worker rushed out from the shop with blood on his arm. The dog ran away. The cat ran away too. Their shop was not only a restaurant, but also a wholesale business. Earlier, someone wanted to buy a dog, so the worker took him to see the dog. Before he got close to the storage room, he heard someone say that the cat had run away. He was secretly happy, but when he reached the door, he heard that the dog's barking was not right, and he was worried. When he opened the door, he saw a big dog charging at him. If not for his quick reaction, his arm would have been broken. When the young man heard the worker's words, his heart skipped a beat. He hurried over to check out the situation. After 2 steps, he turned back to look at Uncle Guan. Before he could say anything, Uncle Guan pulled out the tools used to shoot dogs from his truck. "Let's go. My hands are itchy, so I'll give you a hand." "These animals are just restless," Uncle Guan said casually, but there was a crazed and cruel murderous intent in his words. Jingtan did not know what was going on at the restaurant, so he kept running. However, it took too much effort to open the cage earlier, and the effect of the drug had not completely worn off. Suddenly, a wave of tiredness and fainting hit him. Misfortune never came alone. The people behind him rode motorcycles and drove cars, picking up the escaped cats and dogs along the way. Not only the owner of the restaurant, other people on the street also joined in the action. The dogs barking and the sound of the batons stimulated Jingtan's eardrums. Jingtan just wanted to leave this street as soon as possible. This place was like a demon's den, but his legs were not listening to him, and his heartbeat was irregular. Before he lay down, Jingtan practically crawled to a corner. They were already out of the street, but when Jingtan heard the running footsteps, it was useless even if she cursed God in her heart. She took a few deep breaths to recover a little and planned to hide in the garbage dump at the corner. Although she was unwilling, her life was more important. Just as he was about to crawl into the trash pile, a white shadow appeared around the corner. A few young men were holding nets, sacks, and iron batons. They caught the escaped cats and dogs along the way. No one on this street had pets, so as long as they saw a cat or dog, they would catch it or hit it with a baton. It did not matter whether they were dead or alive. When they turned the corner, the young men saw a large white bear squatting not far from the trash pile. Even though they caught dogs, they did not dare to do so. It was a familiar face. It was raised by the son of a big boss, and it lived nearby. It was not on their street. Looking at the big white bear that was baring its teeth at them, the young men quickly left. The big guy did not have a good attitude toward the people on the street. Soon after they left, a girl about 17 or 18 years old passed by on a foldable bicycle. She waved at them. "Yu Jian, let's go." "Woof." The big white bear barked. It looked at Jingtan, who was trapped inside, and jogged to catch up. The numbness only appeared for a while. After resting for a while, Jingtan began to feel his legs and feet again. Maybe it was the effect of the drug, or maybe it was the side effect of the drug, but he did feel much better now. Chapter 59. At night. Tsinghua University's residential area. The Jiao Pa was standing in front of the door. He raised his hand and rubbed his face to hide his tired expression. He took out his keys and opened the door. The sofa in the living room was still empty. There was no longer a black cat lying there and watching TV. When they heard the sound of the door opening, the doors of the two children's rooms opened at almost the same time. However, when they saw the expression on the Jiaopa's face, their eyes dimmed again. It had been a week, and there was still no news. The few illegal cat and dog trafficking dens that were taken down in Chuhua City didn't have the information they wanted. Bang! The door of the two children's rooms was closed again. They went to do their homework. When they first found out that their cat was missing, the eyes of the two children were swollen from crying. Even though a week had passed, their eyes were still red and they were in low spirits. Still no news, the Jiaoma asked in a low voice. She was also in a bad mood. The Jiaopa shook his head and didn't say anything. After a while, he said, Celestine and Director He are helping to look for it. Director Zhao also asked a friend to keep an eye out for news in this area. There should be news soon. Just as he finished speaking, the phone in the bedroom rang. The Jiaopa quickly got up to answer it. The two children in the room pressed their ears against the door, hoping to hear some good news. However, the Jiaopa didn't say much after answering the phone. He only said a few words in a very low voice. He didn't seem to be very happy. After he hung up the phone, the Jiaopa took out a cigarette and stood on the balcony to smoke. Normally, the Jiaopa didn't smoke unless he was in a bad mood. The person who called just now was Celestine. He told the Jiaopa the results of his investigation. There was no news of black charcoal. However, the person who sold the tranquilizer gun had found it. Following this lead, they dug deeper. However, the person who bought the tranquilizer gun wasn't a local and was more cunning, so they couldn't find much. Although there wasn't much useful information, Jiaopa had always had a suspect in his heart. Then, he thought about his recent encounter with Professor Ren in the hospital. Professor Ren seemed to be quite proud of himself recently. While the people of Chuhua City were busy searching for Jingtan was sleeping in the attic of a villa. That day, he followed Dabai and the girl to a neighborhood nearby. The neighborhood was more luxurious, with elevators and villas. Dabai's house was one of the villas. As the girl's speed was not fast, it looked like she was just taking a stroll. She would stop and occasionally get off to buy something, so Jingtan was able to secretly catch up with her. It was just that he was too tired and had a hard time. His condition that day was really bad. The girl and the white bear entered from the main entrance of the residential area, but Jingtan entered from the side of the fence. He followed the direction of the girl and the dog and arrived at a villa. He found a nice place in the villa, the attic. For a cat, climbing into the attic of an American-style villa was not difficult. The attic of this villa was piled with some junk. Usually, no one would come here, so many places were covered with cobwebs and dust. There were originally a few rats, but after Jingtan arrived, they probably packed up and ran away. Anyway, Jingtan did not see them again. It was not easy to find a temporary place to stay. Jingtan's tense nerves finally relaxed a little. He rummaged through the things in the attic and found a pillow from a cardboard box. He did not care if there was a moldy smell on it and lay down on it to rest. Jingtan was woken up by the pitter-patter of the rain. The rain hit the windows of the attic, making pitter-patter sounds. In the quiet environment of the attic, the pitter-patter sounds were particularly clear. The sky outside was already dark. Another day had passed. Here, Jingtan could see the street lights of the residential area through the attic's window, as well as the lights of the surrounding residents. The shadows of people were flickering. At this time, it should be dinner time. Jingtan moved his nose. There was only a moldy smell in the attic. Jingtan knew where this area was and how far it was from Chuhua City. One was a central city, and the other was a coastal area in the south. It was because he was clear that he was at a loss. Xiahe City was not too far away from Nancheng, where he had lived for 20 years. Jingtan looked at the raindrops on the window. He did not know what he was thinking. To be precise, he was in a daze. However, he did not stay in a daze for long. Sigh, he was hungry. Jingtan thought that he would wait until later, when everyone in this family was asleep, and then go down to look for food. Jing Tan was not ready to expose himself. This family had a dog. They might not eat dog meat, but who knew if they would eat cats? What kind of character did this family have? He did not want to take the risk. Stretching, Jing Tan moved his hands and feet, thinking about what to do in the future. If it was a human, it would be good. Unfortunately, it was just a cat. Waiting was boring. Jing Tan rummaged through the junk and pulled out a small ball, the kind that was used for children's toys. It looked like it had not been touched for a long time. Lying on the pillow, Jing Tan played with the ball with his 4 paws. His palm gently pushed the ball back, and then he used his foot to kick it back. Looking at the ball jumping in the air, Jing Tan felt that he was really like an animal in a circus. Speaking of which, if he was not there, he did not know what would happen to the Jiao family. There was also Xiaoguo's advertisement. Jing Tan played with the ball and thought about things at the same time. The sound of the family's laughter came from downstairs. There was also the sound of advertisements on the TV and the familiar dialect that he had not heard in a long time. Finally, in the middle of the night, the rain outside seemed to have stopped. There was a window in the attic that could be pushed open. The family probably did not know that a window in their attic was broken. However, even if they knew, they would not care because the window was very small. Even a 7 or 8-year-old child would not be able to climb in easily. There was no need to worry about thieves entering the attic. Coming out from the slanted window, Jing Tan looked around. Because it had just rained, the surroundings were wet. Looking at the water stains on the soles of his feet, Jing Tan found a place to go down from the roof and went to the kitchen. Initially, Jing Tan saw that there was an opening on the door for pets and wanted to use it to enter. However, after trying it out, it was locked. It was probably because the white bear was too big. It could be used when it was young, but now, it had no use. Therefore, the owner had directly locked the door. Since he could not enter through the door, Jing Tan could only climb through the window. Fortunately, there was a window above that was not closed. Jing Tan climbed through that window. Before he climbed through the window, Jing Tan purposely stepped on the doormat at the back door a few times to dry the water stains on his feet. He did not want to leave cat paw prints in the kitchen. There was a large refrigerator in the kitchen. Jing Tan opened the refrigerator and looked inside. There was not much food. Looking at the family's condition, even if they did not finish their dinner, they would probably directly throw it away. However, the good thing was that there were some pre-made meatballs bought from the supermarket. Jing Tan ate a few, but they were not cooked. He could only make do with them. Most of the other food was for children. There were some biscuits, fruit cakes, and so on. Jing Tan ate some of them. Jing Tan took out some of the snacks that came with individual small packaging. He would take them to the attic later. After eating some food, Jing Tan felt much better. Although they were all cold, it was much better than starving. Gently closing the refrigerator door, Jing Tan carried some snacks and quietly left. He was getting more and more proficient at walking with 2 legs. It was a little troublesome to climb through the window. It was not easy to climb with 2 legs, so Jing Tan carried the snacks out bag by bag. Before leaving the kitchen, Jing Tan looked at the gap under the closed kitchen door. Through the gap, he could see some white dog hair. The big white bear was lying on the other side of the door. Jing Tan believed that it should have discovered him, but it did not make a sound. What a good dog. It could bare its teeth at the people who beat the dog, and it would cover for him. It was quite smart. After looking for food, he moved the bags of snacks to the attic. Jing Tan lay on the musty pillow again. He never thought that he would steal food at night like a mouse. He had fallen to this point. At night, he slept well. He did not know if it was because of the drugs, but Jing Tan had been sleepy recently. Sometimes, he slept very deeply. Even if someone was next to him, he probably could not hear it. The next day, Jing Tan heard several news. For Jing Tan, the news was not bad. First, he heard that there was a murder on the street that sold cat and dog meat. The victim was Uncle Rod, the famous person on the street. The cause of death was a rabies attack. It was strange that this experienced person did not get vaccinated, or rather, he did not get vaccinated in time. Theoretically speaking, he should have known better than others how to protect himself, but in the end, he did not escape death. Zheng Tan listened to the discussions of the people around him and came up with many possibilities. Maybe there was a problem with the vaccine, or maybe the veteran had been careless. Or maybe he had been infected for a long time but had not been vaccinated. Or maybe he had eaten dog meat. After all, the hygiene of the street was not very good. They had cut corners when cooking, and the rabies virus was not completely eradicated. These were all possibilities. In any case, there were many different opinions, but the truth was that the famous Uncle Rod had died of rabies. Other than this famous Uncle Rod, there was another unlucky person, and that was the young man who had captured Zheng Tan. It was said that when Uncle Rod was sick, the young man had gone to find him. In the end, Uncle Rod, who was not in his right mind, had hit him with a bottle of alcohol. He was still lying in the hospital. Hearing these two pieces of news, Zheng Tan was very happy. Even though he did not know Uncle Rod well, from the discussions around him, the old man had killed countless dogs. He had even taught a group of people to kill dogs and trap cats. He had even poached, so he deserved to die. Furthermore, because of Uncle Rod, everyone on the street was in danger. Even those who did not kill the dogs in their own restaurants went to the hospital to get vaccinated. After all, many animals could carry rabies. As for the young man, Zheng Tan thought to himself, even if you can walk out of the hospital alive, don't let me see you, or I'll kill you. Zheng Tan would remember this grudge. Other than these two pieces of news, Zheng Tan also heard that the family was going out for a vacation that weekend. There would be no one at home, and it would be easier for Zheng Tan to do what he wanted. Zheng Tan wanted to use the family's phone to inform the Jiao Pa. Even if he could not say what he wanted to say, at least he could let them know that he was still alive. Zheng Tan had thought it through. He would call the Jiao family, and then the Jiao Pa would call the family, and then they would come to pick him up. After all, the family would be back on Sunday night, and he would not have to wait for too long. It was better than being homeless. 2 days later, on Friday afternoon, the family had packed their things. When the children came back from school, they drove an off-road vehicle and left with the family and the dog. After they left, Zheng Tan could not wait to jump into the house through the window to look for the phone. There was a landline next to the sofa in the living room. Zheng Tan jumped on it, bent his arm, and picked up the receiver. Then he raised his paw and pressed the numbers one by one. Zheng Tan remembered the Jiao family's phone number. In Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo's rooms, there were 3 numbers, the family's landline, the Jiao Pa's, and the Jiao Ma's. Therefore, Zheng Tan knew these 3 numbers by heart. But until now, Zheng Tan had only called the Jiao Ma when the Jiao Pa was sick. Zheng Tan was a little nervous when she pressed the button, but after she pressed the number, the voice on the other end of the line said, "The number you have dialed is not in service." Zheng Tan was stunned. He dialed again, and the result was the same. Had the Jiao family's landline changed? Zheng Tan dialed the Jiao Pa's number again, and the call did not go through. He tried the Jiao Ma's number again, and it still did not go through. F***CK. Was there a problem with this phone? It could not make long-distance calls? That was not right. Yesterday, he heard the family's owner calling someone overseas. How could it be a long-distance call? Zheng Tan did not give up and tried again. The result was the same. Zheng Tan was so angry that he wanted to throw the phone away. Unfortunately, he could not remember the phone numbers of other people in Chuhua City. Zheng Tan squatted on the sofa and scratched his head. If he had known this would happen, he would have memorized more numbers and tried them one by one. Celestine's, Xian's dormitories, Zhao Li's, Little Zhua's, Huang's, Depeng's, Old Man Lan's, Chu Xiangyang's. Zheng Tan could not remember any of these people's numbers. That time, Celestine had said that he had changed his phone number. Unfortunately, Jingtan had forgotten about it when he turned around. F***ck. He regretted it. The sound of cloth tearing rang out. Jingtan came back to his senses and looked at the sofa under him. He had accidentally scratched the fabric sofa. He hoped that the family's owner would not link it to the cat. Jingtan pulled his ears and jumped down from the sofa. He looked for something to eat in the kitchen and even found a can of milk to drink. Even though he was full, Jingtan still felt a chill in his heart. Night fell. Chapter 60. Speaking of Nanchang, people would always think of its legendary speed of development. This international metropolis had always attracted countless people with dreams to come here. This year, the opening of the subway, the opening of small and medium-sized enterprises, the rise of civil power, and so on were all driving the development of Nanchang. On the streets, people in suits and carrying briefcases came and went in a hurry. The fashionable young people also became more and more flamboyant. Jingtan, sitting in the pickup truck, looked up at the tall buildings outside. The retrograde landmark buildings opened doors in Jingtan's memory. Suddenly seeing these, Jingtan felt like he didn't know what year it was. The sun was a little dazzling, but the temperature was very warm. If he was in a more peaceful environment, Jingtan wouldn't mind sleeping. Unfortunately, this was not the case. Jingtan was very familiar with this city. In addition to the fun spots that he used to frequent, he had also driven to some other places. When he was bored, he liked to take a girl out for a walk, so he could remember many places. However, after all, there was a time difference. This city was changing every year. Compared to a few years later, it was still young, but it didn't lose its vitality. The bus stops and street signs were constantly telling Jingtan the direction and route of the car. The pickup truck drove towards the city center, and Jingtan was happy to do so. However, his happiness didn't last long. The pickup truck drove into a residential area. This residential area wasn't very high-end in Nanchang, and it wasn't very big. After the pickup truck stopped, Jingtan immediately jumped down from it without being noticed by the driver. After jumping out of the car, Jingtan first found a place to hide. He didn't know what Nanchang's attitude towards stray cats was at this time. If stray cats were seen on the streets, would they be taken away? If they were really caught, Jingtan wasn't sure if he could escape successfully every time. It was close to noon, and the temperature was about 20 degrees. Compared to Chuhua City, it was slightly warmer. Jingtan hid in a corner and moved his nose. He smelled a stench on his body, and his body was a little itchy. He didn't know if it was because he was in the same cage with other cats. With so many cats in the same room, the possibility of getting fleas was very high. What a troublesome matter. Jingtan hadn't taken a shower since he was caught. His body was covered in dust, and there were probably some bloodstains on it as well. When the dog cage was opened, there were a lot of dried or half-dried blood stains around the shelf. Jingtan inevitably got some of it, and it still smelled. However, the good thing was that the color of his fur made these stains not obvious, and he didn't look too miserable. If it was white fur, it would be difficult to clean it. Without shower gel, it would be difficult to clean it. Therefore, Jingtan was very glad that his fur was all black. Jingtan never licked his own fur. Now, when there was no one to help him with the hot water to comb his fur, he had to find a way to do it himself. In order to not look like a stray cat, she had to keep her body clean and her fur smooth. Jingtan looked around the neighborhood and finally chose the man-made pool. There were some koi and other small fish in it. The pool must have been cleaned often. The water was clean, and the rockery was tidied up well. Taking advantage of the fact that there weren't many people loitering outside at noon, Jingtan jumped into the pool and swam around. He rubbed against the rockery to wash off the sticky dirt on his body and smooth the knotted fur on his body. After rubbing for a while, Jingtan played with the fish for a while, chasing them around. However, Jingtan had no interest in raw fish, so he didn't eat them. After feeling that it was enough, Enchanting came out of the pool and shook his fur to get rid of the water on his body. Sometimes, Enchanting wondered why cats would lick themselves when there was water on their bodies, but dogs would shake their fur vigorously or rub themselves on the ground when there was water on their bodies. Especially dogs with long fur. Sahara of the East Courtyard was one of them. He would rub himself everywhere after bathing, so his owner had to tie him up every time he bathed. Enchanting's fur wasn't long, so he couldn't shake off much water. When the wind blew, he felt a little cold. He couldn't get sick now. If he got sick, he would probably be thrown away like the plague or disposed of in some other way. Looking around, Enchanting saw a first-floor resident drying a towel outside on the balcony. He ran over and grabbed one with his claws. He wiped his fur. Enchanting was already familiar with this kind of thing. Without shower gel, the water in the pool wasn't very clean, but it was passable. It was better than not washing at all. After washing, Enchanting felt a lot more refreshed. In order to let his fur dry faster, Enchanting jumped onto a tree and found a place with sunlight to dry his fur. The neighborhood was quiet. Occasionally, he could hear some dogs barking. The greenery was good, but it wasn't as comfortable as the East Courtyard of Tsinghua University. Enchanting had now formed a habit of comparing it to the East Courtyard. After yawning, Enchanting changed his position. The fur on his back was almost dry, but the fur on his stomach was still dry. He lay on his side and changed the angle to continue drying his fur. He really missed the children's hair dryer in the Jiao family. Enchanting closed his eyes and rested. He had to be alert at all times. Otherwise, he would be tricked. With the experience of being caught, Enchanting didn't dare to be careless at any time, let alone in this unfamiliar environment. Occasionally, there would be people walking around. As long as they weren't walking in his direction, Enchanting wouldn't get up and run away. He tried to save as much energy as possible. After all, it wasn't the day where he could go home and open the fridge whenever he wanted to eat. Small footsteps sounded. In other words, it was the sound of walking through the grass. Enchanting's ears twitched. It didn't sound like a human's, nor was it a dog's. Enchanting knew the sound of a dog's paws walking on the ground. So, it was the same kind. Enchanting opened his eyes and looked over. A white Persian cat was walking towards him with elegant steps. Many people said that Persian cats were born spoiled and gave people a feeling of magnificence and nobility. It was like a noble, not something a stray cat could compare to. Enchanting didn't care if it was a noble or not. At the moment, he was staring at the cat tag on the Persian cat's neck. The tip of his tail moved. It seemed that there was a good way, even if the fur on the cat's body was cleaner, there was no guarantee. It wasn't the most direct way for people in big cities to distinguish stray cats from pet cats. The cat tag was like a person's ID card. It played an important role in such a big city. Sometimes, it could change the attitude of passersby. With a cat tag, it proved that the owner valued the cat more. It also told people that the cat had a backer. To get rid of the impression that it was a stray cat, Enchanting had to start with the cat tag. After all, he didn't look like a famous cat. As long as he went out and rolled a few times and got dust on him, people would probably think that he was a stray cat. The Persian cat didn't know what Enchanting was thinking, and it didn't notice Enchanting's existence. It certainly didn't know that someone was thinking about its cat tag. It still walked with elegant steps towards a few big trees. It walked over and rubbed against the tree trunks, sharpened its claws, and peed to mark its territory. No matter how elegant a cat was, it couldn't get rid of some of its natural instincts. Enchanting was no longer lying down. He quietly moved over from the branch and waited there. The elegant Persian cat was still intoxicated in its own world. After it finished marking its territory, it was probably ready to go to the pond next to it to watch the fish. When it raised its tail and passed by the tree Enchanting was in, Enchanting saw it and rushed over. When they were in the east side courtyard, Enchanting had seen Huang play and fight with the sheriff. He knew that cats generally used those few skills the most. They would either scratch and slap like a spinning top, or hug and bite and kick with their legs. So, in order to avoid those situations, Enchanting rushed over and rode on its back. He didn't let the Persian cat turn over at all. The Persian cat struggled hard and made an angry meow, but it couldn't compare to Enchanting's strength. Enchanting pressed it to the ground and freed his paws to untie the cat collar on its neck. The cat collar was still leather, like a buckle on a belt, and not the elastic one Enchanting used to wear. The cat tag was also the color of local tycoon gold, and the metal engraved. It was not easy to control his strength to hold down a cat and ensure that it did not suffer any internal injuries or fractures. Furthermore, the cat's fur was thick and long, making it easy for his arm to slip. It took Enchanting quite a bit of effort to hold it down. Sure enough, it was easier to hold it down with a human hand. The cat's paws weren't as flexible as a human's. When he untied the cat collar, he was almost scratched by the cat several times. The cat looked very gentle, but when it was pressed down, it was really irritable. Meow. The Persian cat that was pressed on the ground growled, as if it wanted to immediately scratch Enchanting. It was full of anger. Meow my ass. I'm just borrowing the cat tag. Just hand over the cat tag obediently. With such a noble appearance, even if it didn't use the cat tag, no one would think it was a stray cat. Besides, if it lost the cat tag, its owner would definitely give it another one. In order to ensure his own safety, Enchanting had no choice but to rob this brother of his. Hey, what are those two cats doing? Are they fighting? A little girl's voice came from not far away. Enchanting looked over. There were two children, not even as old as Zhao Yuan. The little girl who spoke just now was about the same age as little Pomelo. There was a pool between them and Enchanting, so Enchanting wasn't worried that they would immediately run over. There was a 10-year-old boy next to the little girl. After seeing Enchanting's situation, he immediately covered the little girl's eyes. Oh, it's broad daylight. Shame. Enchanting was speechless. Shame your ass. What was this little brat thinking? Seeing the two children run away, Enchanting continued to struggle with the cat collar. With great difficulty, he finally untied the cat collar from the Persian cat's neck. Enchanting held the cat collar in his mouth and retreated. However, after the Persian cat got up, it didn't attack Enchanting. It arched its back and looked at Enchanting vigilantly. Then it ran away, probably to find comfort at home. Holding the cat collar in his mouth, Enchanting climbed up the tree. He adjusted the collar so that he could take it off at any time. It looked a little loose. The shiny gold cat tag was too eye-catching against the black fur, but it was better than nothing. He bent his claws to take a look at the cat tag. The name of the Persian cat was engraved on it. Katie. This name was so King high-end. The problem wasn't it awkward to give a male cat such a name? Enchanting still felt that Caesar was more domineering. Forget it, I'll just make do with it. After adjusting the cat collar, Enchanting didn't immediately put it back on. Instead, he hid it and walked around the neighborhood. He found a house and climbed into it to get something to eat. Chapter 61. Coming out of the neighborhood, Enchanting was ready to hitch a ride. When he decided to come to this city, Enchanting already had a plan. Enchanting rarely took the bus before. When he was too young to drive, he would take a taxi when he went out. He didn't want to squeeze with other people on the bus. Because of this, he left an impression on many people that he was a rich young master. Of course, behind the rich young master was a sucker. Walking along the sidewalk, Enchanting came to a stop sign. A few young girls who were waiting for the bus saw Enchanting and squatted down to tease him. The people around them just smiled and didn't say much. This was the advantage of wearing a cat tag. In many people's eyes, wearing a cat tag meant that the cat in front of them had been vaccinated and was well taken care of. It wasn't a stray cat that might carry germs, so even if they didn't like cats very much, they wouldn't dislike them too much. If it was a cat that didn't wear a cat tag and looked very ordinary, even if the cat acted very close to people, they would still be very repulsed. Zheng Tan didn't immediately walk away when he saw the young girls. He cooperated with them and rubbed against them. He was happy to be touched by the girls. If they took out some trinkets from their keychains, Zheng Tan pretended to be very interested and raised his paw to touch them a few times to earn their favor. While pretending to cooperate, Zheng Tan also paid attention to the bus routes and stops on the stop sign. He wasn't familiar with many of the stops, but he knew the names of some of the landmark buildings and places. He couldn't move around in the daytime, so he could only wait until night to hitch a ride. After figuring out the general route, Zheng Tan found a place to sit and wait for night to come. It was impossible to find a pickup truck every time, and not every pickup truck would take the route Zheng Tan planned. So Zheng Tan decided to hitch a ride on the bus. Forget about the double-decker buses, and forget about the trams. To avoid accidents, Zheng Tan chose to hitch a ride on the more common single-decker buses. Finally, the sky turned dark. Zheng Tan's chest tightened as he looked at the crowded buses. Fortunately, he didn't have to squeeze in. When the bus he wanted arrived at the bus stop, Zheng Tan sped up and rushed over without waiting for the door to open. Then, he jumped onto the roof of the bus. It was noisy inside the bus, so no one heard the noise from the roof. What happened just now? A passenger sitting by the window saw a black shadow flash by from the corner of his eye. What do you mean, what happened? Forget it, I guess my eyes are playing tricks on me. I'll take a nap first. Wake me up when we arrive. The man leaned against the window and began to take a nap. At this moment, Zheng Tan, who had jumped on the roof of the car, was still a little surprised. He thought that he would step on the window or something to assist him when he jumped. He didn't expect that when he accelerated toward the car, he suddenly had a strong feeling of confidence that he could jump directly. After that, he was already on the roof of the car. He moved his legs and didn't feel any discomfort. After the passengers had alighted and boarded the bus, the door closed and the bus started moving. Zheng Tan quickly ran over and hooked onto the protrusion at the skylight of the bus. The roof of the bus was relatively smooth. After the bus started moving, if it made a sharp turn or a sudden stop, Zheng Tan would probably be thrown out. Therefore, he had to firmly hook onto the fixed object to stabilize himself. Probably no one would have thought that there was a cat lying on the roof of this very ordinary bus. Zheng Tan couldn't tell where the bus was going. He could only pay attention to the bus's stop announcement every time it arrived at the bus stop. This bus's route was only part of the route that Zheng Tan wanted. Therefore, after arriving at a certain stop, Zheng Tan had to get off the bus and change to another route to continue his ride. Some buses stopped at 9 o'clock in the evening. Some were open all night. Every time he changed buses, Zheng Tan had to look at the time of the bus he was about to take. It would be best if the bus was open all night. That way, he wouldn't have to worry about not being able to wait for another bus. Taking the bus was troublesome, but in order to achieve his goal, Zheng Tan had to repeat this trouble again and again. In this way, Zheng Tan was getting closer and closer to the destination in his heart. When the bus stopped at a stop in the middle, Zheng Tan suddenly heard someone calling him. "Hey, Zheng Tan, wait a minute." It was a child's voice. Zheng Tan couldn't remember who it was. Zheng Tan looked in the direction of the voice. He only saw the back of a few children walking into a taxi. The night light intertwined, so he couldn't see clearly. There was an arcade around this stop. Zheng Tan recalled that he often came here when he was young. When he was in the mood, he would skip class and come here to play for the whole day. Although there were many places that minors were not allowed to enter, that was only on the surface. As long as you threw money, there would naturally be places to play. The taxi went away. The route was in the same direction as Zheng Tan's own plan. However, Zheng Tan couldn't see the appearance of the passengers in the car clearly. He could only vaguely see that there were a few children sitting inside. He was inexplicably nervous. When the bus suddenly moved, Jingtan almost lost his grip and slid out. After getting off the bus at the stop, Jingtan squatted not far from the bus stop and looked at the bus stop sign showing the various bus routes. This was the last bus. After the bus came, it would be very close after 7 or 8 stops. The name of the last stop was the name of the neighborhood Jingtan used to live in. It was easy to recognize. As he was thinking, Jingtan suddenly became alert. He dodged sideways. The place where he was squatting just now was hit by a rubber bullet. It bounced up and disappeared. After being caught, Jingtan's vigilance increased a lot. He was also more sensitive to the danger around him. That was why he could dodge the rubber bullet so quickly. Jingtan had played with rubber bullets before. It was a toy that children liked. Jiao Yuan also had one. Looking sideways, Jingtan saw a few young people sitting by the railings. They looked like they had drunk too much. They probably saw a cat on the side of the road and raised their toy guns to shoot at it. They usually liked to play shooting games. They had played rubber bullets, paintballs, field games, and so on. The toy guns in their hands were won from a shooting game at the club. Although they didn't like children's toys, they could use them to pass the time when they were bored. Moreover, even if they had drunk, they were very confident in their shooting skills. They thought they would hear the cat scream, but they didn't expect that the cat could dodge it. Therefore, they got excited. A few of them got up and walked towards Jingtan. F***ck. Jingtan cursed in his heart. His luck was really F***king bad. On the other side, a few young men were holding toy guns. They shouted like madmen as they chased after Jingtan. Rubber bullets were fired one after another. Jingtan didn't want to run too far. He wanted to wait for the last bus, but the crazy people behind him kept chasing. As Jingtan ran, he looked around to see if there was a good place to hide. There was a van at the corner. The door of the luggage compartment at the back was open. Jingtan rushed in and found a place to hide. The driver of the van had a cigarette in his hand and was talking to the people standing outside the van. He didn't even notice that there was an extra cat in his car. There was no one else in the van except for the driver. There were some goods on the seats, such as color TVs and other household appliances. There was also some stuff in the luggage compartment. In the back, there were daily necessities, such as toothpaste, shower gel, shampoo, and so on. Jingtan hid behind the goods and looked at the crazy young people running towards him through the gap. "Where did the cat go?" one of the young people said as he fiddled with his hair. There were some shopping malls around. After turning the corner, there were no bushes or flower beds except for the trees on both sides of the road. "Did it climb up a tree?" another young man said as he looked at the surrounding trees. The person who first shot at Jingtan looked around and walked towards the van. Jingtan shrank back and lowered his body, trying to hide himself. Just as the young man was getting closer, another person came to the back of the minivan. This person was the one who had spoken to the driver earlier. He raised his hand and pulled the door of the luggage compartment open with all his might. Pa! The door of the van was closed. Jingtan was speechless. He turned around and saw that the driver had finished smoking and closed the window. Jingtan's plan to run out through the window was ruined. F***ck. Bad luck. Life is full of obstacles. No amount of beauties could calm Jingtan's heart, which was currently galloping like an alpaca. Jingtan suddenly wanted to yell, F***ck, let me out. However, Jingtan's response was the sound of the van's engine. It was as if there was a pair of invisible hands that forced him away when he was close to the target. He couldn't resist. He was so close to the target twice, but the result was still the same. Was this God's will? Jingtan didn't know. The driver was playing some nostalgic songs in the van. Jingtan used to listen to a few of them before. Coupled with Jingtan's complicated feelings, he had the urge to bang his head against the wall. There were no walls here, so Jingtan hit the back seat. The music in the van was too loud, so the driver didn't hear the strange sounds behind him. He was still singing along in his narcissistic state. After a while, the driver's phone rang. He turned down the music and answered the call. Zheng Tan wanted to say that it was dangerous to talk on the phone while driving, but he used to do this often. Even drunk driving was common. Zheng Tan really felt that he was lucky to be able to grow up safely. Okay. I'll call him. Yes, I know how to call the landline. Oh, what's the area code in Beijing? 010. Okay. I got it. The driver happily talked on the phone, but Zheng Tan felt like he was stuck in mud and then struck by lightning. Area code? F***CK, he didn't add the area code last time. As for the phone, it seemed like he needed to add a 0 when he called a long-distance call from another province. Zheng Tan, you're a pig. He hadn't used a phone for so long that he didn't even remember this basic knowledge. Zheng Tan wanted to slap himself a few times. His brain wasn't working at the critical moment. He really didn't expect it to be so severe at that time. The opportunity was so close, and he had suffered so much for nothing. His current situation was even more unpredictable. If the Jiaopan knew about it, he would definitely blame himself for not teaching his cat how to make long-distance calls. Zheng Tan lay on a cardboard box, thinking back to when he made the call. His brain wasn't very clear, and he wasn't very rational. It must be the side effect of the drug. Yes, the telecommunications company was also at fault. Even if they couldn't recognize the number from another province, they should have given some hints. No matter what, the opportunity was missed. What should he do now? Zheng Tan was annoyed. Should he hit the driver until he fainted? Zheng Tan looked at the flashing street lights outside the car window, estimated the speed of the car, and then looked at the cars coming and going outside. It was quite dangerous, and he could get into an accident if he wasn't careful. Forget it, he would find a chance to call the driver when he reached his home. Since he had found the key, he wasn't afraid that he couldn't solve it. Zheng Tan was still optimistic as she planned her next course of action. However, when the car stopped, Zheng Tan jumped out of the van while the driver was moving the goods, and was stunned by the woods and fields that filled his vision. Chapter 62. When Zheng Tan got out of the car, the sky was already a little bright. Because he was too engrossed in his thoughts, Zheng Tan didn't pay attention to how long the minivan had been running. He didn't even expect that he would be so unlucky. He just happened to sit in this car and the car left the city. He didn't even know if this place was still in Nanchang. However, according to the time, he was afraid that he was already far away from Nanchang. What he saw were patches of woods and fields that stretched to the horizon. The countryside was not poor. The houses of the residents were modern, and only a few places still had the old-fashioned tiled houses. Zheng Tan didn't know where this place was on the map, but seeing that many of the residents' houses were 2- or 3-story bungalows, he knew that the living conditions of these people were good. It was easier to find a phone. If it was a poor place, it would be difficult to find a phone. Zheng Tan wrote down the address of the minivan driver's house. If the driver drove again, he could continue to ride. After that, Zheng Tan was ready to walk around to familiarize himself with the terrain and the unfamiliar environment. To wait for an opportunity, he must spend the waiting days peacefully. He wanted to see which residents were easier to kill and easier to find food. He also wanted to see which villagers had phones at home and whether it was easy to find an opportunity to make a call. Another important thing was to find a safer place for himself. In terms of safety, Zheng Tan preferred the taller branches. Perhaps because the temperature here was slightly higher than in the central region at this time of the year, it was warmer. Many deciduous trees were leafy, which was good for Zheng Tan to hide. Walking around the village, Zheng Tan met a few dogs and a cat that was playing with bugs outside. They were all kept in captivity. Seeing them wandering around leisurely, Zheng Tan felt more at ease. The fact that these cats and dogs were wandering around meant that no one was trying to trick the dogs and cats. Zheng Tan found a large locust tree with lush foliage as a temporary foothold when the weather was clear. She jumped up and tried it out. Overall, she was quite satisfied. She chose a branch to lie down on and looked around. From here, he could see the situation in the village. At the same time, he was not very close to the village, so he would not be harassed by the villagers. There was a citrus grove near the locust tree, and there were 2 dogs tied up in it. Zheng Tan had just seen a cat enter the citrus garden and walk past the 2 dogs. The 2 dogs only glanced at it and then did not respond. They were probably familiar with each other and did not bother to bark. A black butterfly flew past the big locust tree and into the citrus garden, dancing among the citrus trees. Zheng Tan remembered that this seemed to be a type of butterfly. He had seen something similar in Old Man Land's small garden before. In the end, the butterfly that flew into the small garden was made into a specimen by Old Man Lan. At that time, there were still a few students present. Zheng Tan overheard their discussion, saying that in some places, this phoenix butterfly was the legendary Liangzhu butterfly. The butterfly was also very particular. To be able to become a butterfly, this butterfly had to be type 2. The so-called type 2 meant that there were inherent and obvious differences between female and male individuals, allowing people to determine the butterfly's gender through these differences. Liang Shanbua and Zhu Yingtai were a man and a woman. Connecting it to the legend, people felt that there should be differences when they turned into butterflies. On the other hand, for example, the Damo butterfly, because the male and female phoenix butterflies were similar in color, it was not easy to distinguish them. Therefore, they were not advocated as Liangzhu butterflies. Zheng Tan looked at the pattern on the wings of this phoenix butterfly. It looked like a female butterfly, which was Zhu Yingtai. Zheng Tan was admiring Zhu Yingtai. Suddenly, the cat that walked into the citrus garden jumped up from behind a citrus tree and slapped the butterfly down with its paw. It slapped it a few times and played with it with its paw. Then, it ate it. Zheng Tan, he did not know how the people who told the legend would feel when they saw this scene. After Liang Shanbua and Zhu Yingtai turned into butterflies, they were eaten by a cat? The people who heard this cruel version of the story would probably have constipated expressions. Yawning, Zheng Tan closed his eyes and began to sleep. He had no choice. If he wanted to take action, he had to wait until night. Zheng Tan had a dream when he was sleeping. He dreamed of the days when he was in the Jiao family during the New Year. He remembered that day when Zheng Tan and the 2 children sat on the sofa and watched TV. The show was playing, The Dog is Talking. At that time, the Jiao Yuan said, "Black charcoal, you must remember the way home. If you get lost and we can't find you, can you come back by yourself?" Zheng Tan had been conflicted about whether he should stay in Nanjing or find a way to go back to Chuhua City. However, in the end, he decided to go back to Chuhua City. After all, the lives of cats and humans were different. It was really not easy to find a good family. Moreover, Zheng Tan had already begun to miss the courtyard in the eastern district. When night fell, Zheng Tan jumped down from the locust tree and walked towards the villager's house. The people in this place ate early and went to bed early, so Zheng Tan did not have to wait too long. He first found a few houses and found some food to eat. It was not very delicious, so he could only make do with it. After eating, he went to find a phone. Associate Professor Jiao should be at home too. Zheng Tan waited excitedly after dialing the number. However, when he heard the notification sound from the phone, Zheng Tan's mood suddenly became gloomy. F***CK. This phone did not have a long-distance lock. He had to find the key to unlock it. Where could he find the key? Zheng Tan rummaged through the drawer, but did not find the small key to unlock the phone's long-distance lock. He was puzzled. Was there a need to lock the phone's long-distance lock? Shouldn't long-distance calls be frequently used in this kind of place? Dejected, Zheng Tan put the phone back. He squatted there and thought for a while. Would the villagers' phones all be locked? Why did he have to try them one by one? But it would be best if he could steal the driver's phone, or someone else's phone. At least a phone would not be as troublesome as a landline. Looking around the bedroom, there were a lot of candies and snacks on the table because there was a wedding. It was probably used to entertain guests. Zheng Tan took out a bag of beef jerky and squid shredded into a big bag. After taking them out, he zipped up the bag and jumped onto the window. He carried the 2 bags of snacks and prepared to leave. When Zheng Tan stood by the window, he was holding the snacks in his hands. His legs were on the windowsill, and he was ready to jump down. Before jumping, Zheng Tan felt someone looking at him. He turned his head to look. The little girl who was reading the picture book next door was hiding outside the bedroom door. She did not shout, but her eyes were filled with curiosity. Zheng Tan paused, then ignored her and jumped off the windowsill. It was not convenient to jump with 2 legs, but it was okay to jump a few times while looking for the phone. Zheng Tan was willing to empty his hands to carry things. Anyway, at this time, no one saw him except for the little girl. What was there to be afraid of? Besides, he would not stay in this place forever. If he was discovered, he could just run away. Zheng Tan left in a carefree manner, but it had a big impact on the child. In the evening, the child's mother came over with a picture book to teach the little girl how to count, from 1 to 10. In order to match the memory, her mother also taught her some things in the real world. How many legs does the little bird use to walk? Her mother asked. 2. The little girl stretched out 2 fingers. How many legs does the big yellow dog use to walk? 4. The little girl counted the legs of the big yellow dog in the picture book and said, "Yes, so smart. How many legs does the little cat use to walk?" Her mother asked with a smile. The little girl thought about the cat she saw today and counted with her fingers. Then she stretched out 2 fingers and said, 2. Her mother was speechless. Zheng Tan did not know the impact he had caused. At this moment, he was holding 2 bags of snacks and walking towards the big locust tree. At this time, there was no one in the field. There were only a few dogs guarding the orchard. No one would see a cat that walked very naturally with 2 legs. As Zheng Tan walked, he thought about how to borrow the phone. Suddenly, he heard a faint humming sound. Zheng Tan perked up her ears and tried to distinguish the sound. She felt that it was similar to the sound of a dog. Putting down the snacks in his hands, Zheng Tan walked in the direction of the sound. If there was any danger, 4 legs would be faster to run. Chapter 63. Puppy. And it was locked in a dog cage. This kind of dog cage was not like the ones Zheng Tan had seen in dog and cat meat restaurants. The cage in front of him was obviously more high-end and looked like it was for pet dogs. Zheng Tan remembered that when he ran from the big locust tree to the villager's house, he didn't hear anything. This should have happened when he was looking for the phone. However, when he was looking for the phone, he avoided some residents who had dogs, so he didn't know who the owner of the cage and the dog belonged to. He moved his ears, but there was no sound of other people around, and there was no smell of strangers. Zheng Tan went to the cage and looked. Because the puppy was too small, Zheng Tan couldn't tell what breed it was. He didn't know much about it. The door of the cage was not locked, but there was a small catch. The puppy didn't know how to open it, so he didn't know how long it had been trapped inside. The temperature at night in the mountains was relatively low. Although it was not as cold as late autumn and winter, it was still not something that a puppy of this size could withstand. Dogs, like cats, had a slightly higher body temperature than humans. The surrounding temperature was about 10 degrees. He didn't know if the puppy could withstand such a difference in temperature. Noticing that Zheng Tan was standing outside the cage, the barking puppy came to Zheng Tan and looked at Zheng Tan through the cage. Seeing that Zheng Tan didn't move, it continued to hum and bite the cage with its small teeth that hadn't grown much. Zheng Tan opened the cage door with his paw. The puppy paused, tested the door, and then ran out. Although it was still a puppy, this kind of dog should be relatively large. Compared to the current Jingtan, the size of these 3 puppies was not much smaller than him. Ignoring the puppy that ran out, Jingtan looked at the other 2 in the cage that didn't move. He raised his paw and touched them. They were still soft. He thought that the 2 puppies were dead. He didn't expect them to kick their legs and open their mouths twice. Did they sleep too soundly? Jingtan looked around. The pit was too big to block the wind. The wind was relatively strong at night. If 2 or 3 of them were left here, they probably wouldn't survive for long. But Jingtan didn't want to get into trouble. He had a hard life, so how could he take care of these 3 puppies? It was more practical to steal a phone as soon as possible and figure out a way to go back to the east courtyard. However, when Jingtan turned around and walked 2 steps, the puppy that ran out of the cage immediately came over and rubbed against Jingtan. Jingtan pushed it aside. It ran back happily, probably thinking that Jingtan was playing with it. Jingtan simply threw it directly into the cage and closed the cage door. He didn't care and it began to hum. He turned around again. So, he threw down the 2 bags of snacks and ran to the villagers. The bread driver's family had already fallen asleep. Some big pots and steamers were set up in the yard. Jingtan looked around and found some porridge in one of the steamers. It was still warm. It hadn't been there for too long, so it was probably left there before the family finished eating. Looking around, Jingtan found the disposable bowl used by the host for guests and filled it with some porridge. There were some boiled eggs in the other big pot. Jingtan found a bag for vegetables and put a few in. When the porridge was brought to the big locust tree, it was no longer hot. Jingtan couldn't find anything to heat it up. Anyway, he brought the porridge over with a tentative attitude. He also put an egg in it. Jingtan ate the egg white himself and put the egg yolk inside to mix with the porridge. If it was the Jingtan of the past, he would definitely not do this. As for his current behavior, for the time being, he attributed it to the derivative emotions of wandering outside. Looking at the porridge in the bowl that had been stirred into a paste, Jingtan felt that he really had no appetite. He didn't know if the puppy could eat this. If the puppy didn't eat it, he didn't care. He opened the cage, put the bowl in the corner of the cage, closed the cage, picked up the 2 bags of snacks, and climbed up the tree to rest. In the middle of the night, Jingtan heard the sound of eating in the cage. It should be the puppy eating, and it seemed that there was more than 1 puppy. When it was almost dawn, Jingtan jumped down the tree to check. There was no porridge in the bowl. Jingtan thought that the 2 puppies would not survive. Now that their stomachs were bulging and their breathing was strong, he guessed that they had gotten up in the middle of the night to eat. It was good to have a strong vitality. The next day, Jingtan continued to go out to find out what the villagers were doing at what time. If the villagers were busy in the fields or orchards, Jingtan would try to steal the phone even during the day. However, he didn't find anything that day. In the end, he ran to the driver's house to look for food. He jumped to the 2nd floor and took a bag of thumb pancakes that children ate. Before leaving, Jingtan saw the little girl again. Just like before, the little girl hid behind the door and looked in Jingtan's direction. She looked very serious and even cracked her fingers, as if she was confirming something. Jingtan didn't know what she was doing. At this time, he also heard footsteps. The busy driver and his wife finally came upstairs. Jingtan quickly jumped off the window sill with the biscuits and ran away. After taking a shower, the little girl's mother took out a picture book to teach her. The little girl answered the first few questions very well, and the driver and his wife were very satisfied. It was safer to hide in the tree. The 3 puppies barked for a long time but did not see any response from Jingtan, so they began to whine again. Feng Xiaokong looked around and saw the hidden dog cage. He was even more confused. Although he was confused, Fang Xiaokong still left, and the cat followed him. After the man walked away, Jingtan jumped down from the tree. The 3 puppies stopped whining and immediately came over. As a result, they were slapped by Jingtan one by one. He didn't use much strength. Such small puppies, if he used more strength, Jingtan suspected that they would become stupid. But the 3 puppies thought that Jingtan was playing with them, so they grinned and came over again. Jingtan was annoyed. He jumped up the tree again, thinking about when he would see a villager with a cell phone who was alone. He would solve the problem by force. In less than half an hour, Jingtan saw the man come over again. This time, he was holding a bowl of porridge in his hand. There was meat in the porridge instead of egg yolks. Fang Xiaokong came over with the bowl and put it in front of the 3 puppies. The 3 puppies had already smelled the smell. They quickly ran over and began to eat. Jingtan curled his lips. Although he was a little dissatisfied that the 3 puppies believed him so easily and began to eat, it saved him the trouble of stealing food for them at night. The 3 puppies ate very quickly. After a while, the bowl of porridge was empty. They even licked the bowl clean. Hey, there really are dogs. A young man in his 20s came over with a shovel. Seeing the 3 puppies step back, he thought for a moment, put the shovel aside with a smile, and walked over with his bare hands. Finished planting the trees? Fang Xiaokong asked. Finished planting. I wonder what those so-called new varieties of citrus will look like, the young man said as he wiped his sweat and leaned against the tree trunk. These dogs don't look like mongrels. Fang Xiaokong pointed at the 3 puppies who were playing with each other. Yes, it's a strung dog, a mongrel dog. This is probably the son of the village head's son, Du Gao. Yesterday, I heard that they threw the puppy away. I didn't expect to see it here. The young man became excited again when he talked about it. The tiredness from planting the tree just now disappeared. Du Gao? I remember someone said that the village chief's son had 2 Du Gao, 1 male and 1 female. Yes, pa. Everyone in our village knows that the female Du Gao didn't like the male Du Gao. Instead, a mongrel got her. I just don't know whose mongrel it is. It's so capable. When the puppies were just born, they could fool people with the excuse that the puppies were too young and didn't grow up. As they grew up, they became more and more like mongrels and could run around. They couldn't hide it anymore. No one was a fool. However, logically speaking, people who could afford a DSLR should also be able to afford a new phone with a colored screen. Why would they still use this one that was already worn out at the corners? However, Jingtan couldn't be bothered to think too much about it. Just this phone was enough to excite Jingtan. After going through so much trouble, climbing through the window and looking for a phone, he had originally planned to snatch one by force. Now, the phone was right in front of him. How could he not be excited? However, this phone should be able to make long-distance calls, right? It wouldn't be in arrears, right? Jingtan looked at the person sitting there with a curious expression. He raised his paw and began to press the button. Fang Xiaokong saw that the black cat was staring at his phone, so he passed the phone to it with a playful thought. Who knew that the cat really pressed the button, and it was a long-distance phone number? It didn't press it blindly. Interesting. Jingtan pressed the phone number excitedly and nervously. He waited with his ears perked up, and his tail slapped the ground to reduce his nervousness. Finally, the phone rang a few times before it was picked up. Hello? It was the Jiao Pa's voice. After being captured for so long, he finally heard a familiar voice again. He suddenly felt touched as if he had seen a real family member. Jingtan gathered all the complicated feelings in his heart into a cry, a woo. The people outside who were talking about Associate Professor Jiao would never have thought that the person they were talking about was talking to his cat on the phone. Black charcoal, is there anyone around you? Associate Professor Zhao asked. Zheng Tan's excitement gradually calmed down. He looked around, and then his eyes fell on Feng Xiaokong. After answering the phone, he pushed the phone to Feng Xiaokong. When Zheng Tan pushed the phone, someone knocked on the door of Associate Professor Zhao's office. Come in, Associate Professor Zhao said without taking the phone away from his ear. It was Zhao Lu who came in. After she found out that the black cat that saved her had been taken, she had been looking for it. She had also asked many friends to help, but the person who took the cat was too slippery and didn't leave any useful clues. Although she and Associate Professor Zhao both suspected that Ren Chong was suspicious, they didn't find any evidence. It was Celestine who went to Ren Chong's house and hid for a while to find some clues. Today, she came to discuss with Associate Professor Zhao how to deal with Ren Chong and get some clues from him. Zhao Le didn't expect to see Associate Professor Zhao smiling when she walked in. Her heart skipped a beat. Did he find it? At Zheng Tan's office, Feng Xiaokong was very confused by the cat's behavior. He looked at the screen of his phone and saw that it was still in the middle of a call, so he picked up the phone. Hello? Associate Professor Zhao heard the voice and didn't have time to talk to Zhao Lu. After introducing himself and the identity of the black cat, he asked a series of questions. As Feng Xiaokong answered the questions, he also learned about the general situation. He was surprised to encounter such a situation. There was actually a cat that called home. In the office, Jiao Pa wrote down Feng Xiaokong's name on a piece of paper when he heard his introduction. Feng as in square and round, Xiao as in 2 ears, Kong as in health, Feng Xiaokong. Third Uncle Feng? Zhao Lu asked. Although Zhao Li's voice wasn't loud, the area around the citrus garden was too quiet. Everyone could hear what Zhao Lu said on the other end of the phone. Feng Xiaokong also heard Zhao Li's words. Feng Xiaokong was the 3rd child in his family. He had 2 older brothers. Someone who could call him Third Uncle Feng must be an acquaintance. Who's that? Feng Xiaokong asked. Associate Professor Zhao looked at Zhao Lu and handed the phone over. Is that really Third Uncle Feng? I'm Zhao Lu, Zhao Lu. Zhao Lu told him about Jing Tan, then said that the black cat had helped him a lot. He hoped that Feng Xiaokong could help him. Feng Xiaokong looked at the cat who was still in the mood to play with the dog. He was very surprised. He did not expect that a cat he met in such a remote village would know an old friend. This cat was very capable. Just like what the elders in the village said, a black cat was always a little strange. Zheng Tan was in a good mood. He hadn't been in such a good mood in a long time. Ever since he was caught, he had been in a constant state of fear. He doubted everyone he met for a long time. Every step he took, he had to think about whether this would work or not. Every day, he had to sleep in the open and take the risk of being caught to steal food. After all, he couldn't stand raw food. All in all, this was a rather bitter experience. But this bitter history was coming to an end. He was about to return to that familiar place, see those familiar people, have a warm bed at night, have someone to help him brush his fur, and have breakfast prepared in the morning. Now that he thought about it, he really missed it. While Zhao Lu and Feng Xiaokong were discussing how to bring the cat back to Chuhua City, the Jiao Pa gestured to Zhao Lu, then said softly, Ren Chong. Zhao Lu reacted quickly. Even if the cat was brought back, if Ren Chong wasn't dealt with, the cat-catching incident would happen again. You mean, I'm relieved to know that it's safe and sound. Since Mr. Feng is an acquaintance of Miss Xiao and can be trusted, then there's no rush to bring black charcoal back. Mr. Feng, please take care of black charcoal first. We'll talk about it after we've settled things here. Zhao Lu nodded and explained the situation briefly to Feng Xiaokong. Feng Xiaokong expressed his understanding. Okay, I'll take the cat and walk there slowly. It'll take at least 10 days to half a month. Take the cat? 10 days to half a month? Does that mean that it'll take at least 10 days to half a month to get back to Chuhua? Zheng Tan's excitement was doused with a bucket of ice dregs. Why? Even if they couldn't take the train, it wouldn't take too long to drive back. Why would it take 10 days to half a month? Jiaopa told Zheng Tan to follow Feng Xiaokong obediently over the phone. Third Uncle Feng would take him back to Chuhua. At the moment, Chuhua couldn't send anyone over to pick up Zheng Tan. There were still things to deal with there. Even though the Jiaopa didn't explain much, Zheng Tan could still analyze the reason from his words. Zheng Tan expressed his understanding. It was for his own good. He didn't want to face people with bad intentions once he got back. Feng Xiaokong looked at the cat in front of him, who was listening to the phone attentively. Even third Uncle Feng, who boasted that he had seen the world and seen many strange things, couldn't help but be amazed. That cat's father was also special. He actually explained so much to a cat. If it were someone else in this village, they would probably be thinking about how to exorcise demons and ward off evil spirits. After the phone call, Zheng Tan was less wary of Feng Xiaokong. Since Feng Xiaokong was someone Zhao Li knew, and he had Zhao Li's guarantee, Zheng Tan didn't need to spend so much effort on guarding against him. At this time, the young man from before also ran over after the phone call. He said that he would drive out tomorrow and bring the 3 puppies to his friend. Knowing that the 3 puppies were settled, Zheng Tan was completely relieved. From the conversation between Feng Xiaokong and the young man, he knew that the person who was going to adopt the 3 puppies was a good person. That night, Zheng Tan followed Feng Xiaokong to the young man's house. Of course, Zheng Tan hid in his backpack. The people in this village didn't like black cats. He was afraid that the landlord would be unhappy if he found out. As for the 3 puppies, the young man also put them in cages and carried them back. After eating and drinking and sleeping well, Zheng Tan woke up early in the morning and followed Feng Xiaokong onto the young man's tricycle. The puppies were in cages. They had a good meal last night and this morning, and now they were going to sleep. The road in the countryside wasn't easy to drive on. There was a long stretch of uneven road. The bumpy driving made Zheng Tan feel dizzy. The 3-hour drive, in fact, would probably take less than an hour if the road was flat. The young man and his friend raised sheep and some cows. They also built a place to raise poultry. The scale was quite large. No wonder they wanted to raise dogs. Looking at the 3 puppies, the friend was very satisfied. He had already tidied up the kennel yesterday. After looking at the 3 puppies, he took them over. Zheng Tan and Feng Xiaokong had lunch there. In the afternoon, the young man would drive them to the county. The road to the county was much better. It wasn't so bumpy. Although the journey was twice as long, it took about the same amount of time. Zheng Tan didn't bring Kitty's cat tag with him. In the village, he took off the cat tag and hid it for convenience. When he left with Feng Xiaokong, he didn't take it. Now, he was really a stray cat without a tag. However, with Feng Xiaokong by his side, Zheng Tan wasn't so anxious. However, his good mood didn't last long. After Feng Xiaokong bought a bicycle, Zheng Tan couldn't stay calm. Chapter 66. Zheng Tan felt that Feng Xiaokong was quite unreliable. After this guy entered the county, he happened to pass by a bicycle shop and suddenly came up with the idea of buying a bicycle. In fact, this guy hadn't ridden a bicycle in a long time. Even when he was traveling, he drove a 4-wheeled bicycle. The owner of the bicycle shop promoted it for a long time, but Feng Xiaokong didn't buy the brand new mountain bike that was said to be the most advanced design. In the end, he bought a second-hand bike. Even if it was a second-hand bike, it was still a mountain bike. The shop owner didn't seem too happy because Feng Xiaokong didn't buy a new bike, but after all, it was still a business deal, so he inspected the bike again. Feng Xiaokong looked at the black cat squatting not far away, then looked at the bicycle being inspected. He said to the shop owner, "Boss, can you add a basket for me?" The shop owner looked at Feng Xiaokong strangely. He probably didn't expect someone to make such a request. Most people bought this type of bike mainly for sports. Who would put a basket on it to buy groceries? However, since the customer made the request, he wouldn't refuse. A basket could still make a few dollars. Being a professional, the boss still asked, "Are you loading the basket to store the goods?" Fang Xiaokong thought for a moment and nodded. "Yes." "How heavy is it?" "It's not too heavy." Then the shop owner didn't say anything else. Since it was just for goods and wasn't heavy, there was no need to modify it too much. He just put a basket on it. After the inspection, the basket was loaded, and the payment was made. Getting on the bike, Fang Xiaokong felt good. It was as if he had returned to his youth. He was suddenly looking forward to the rest of the trip. Jing Tan squatted at the side and looked coldly at the self-satisfied Uncle Fang. He couldn't understand why Uncle Fang would choose such a lifestyle. When he was on the phone with the Jiao Pa, Jing Tan heard a hint of respect in Zhao Li's tone. It wasn't fake politeness, but real respect. This meant that Uncle Fang should have some background. At the very least, he shouldn't be short of money. But why would a man in his 30s choose such a lifestyle? He made himself look like a poor man. As Jing Tan was thinking, Fang Xiaokong rode over. He stopped in front of Jing Tan, patted the basket, and said proudly, "Goods, get on." Jing Tan. Goods my ass. They were going to go from this small county to another city. Their next stop was a big city. The surrounding roads should be relatively good. Jumping on the basket, Jing Tan felt something was wrong, but he couldn't tell why. Anyway, it wasn't as comfortable as squatting in the basket of little Pomlo's children's car. Fang Xiaokong carried his travel bag and rode out of the city on his bicycle. The roads in the city were very smooth, but it was different when they left the city. From the small county to the big city, there were indeed roads, but they were all highways. It was fine to drive there, but it was impossible to ride a bike. There were no highways, so they took the national highway. However, the entire journey wasn't entirely on the national highway. In order to experience the feeling of riding a mountain bike, Fang Xiaokong chose a small rural road after leaving the city. After that, they went on the national highway. Jing Tan's bitter experience began on this small rural road. The front of a mountain bike had a shock absorber design, which was different from ordinary bikes. The owner of the bike shop didn't modify the basket too much when he loaded it, so the one who suffered was Jing Tan. The bicycle traveled along a small country road. The road was filled with potholes, gravel, and dirt. Whenever it bumped, Jing Tan would feel the bicycle's basket move up and down violently. It was much more uncomfortable than riding Wei Lang's bicycle in the past. The shaking made her dizzy. Fang Xiaokong didn't feel too uncomfortable. He was still in the novel stage. He was in a good mood, humming a tune until he felt the movement on the basket. Jing Tan jumped twice in the basket to attract Fang Xiaokong's attention. When Fang Xiaokong stopped the bike, he jumped out of the basket. When he landed, he was still a little dizzy and almost couldn't stand straight. "What's wrong?" Fang Xiaokong looked at Jing Tan, who was squatting on the side of the road and pulling at his ears with an unwilling expression. Then he looked at the basket, raised his hand to push the basket twice, and looked at the front fork of the bike. He suddenly remembered what the owner of the bike shop asked. So this was the main problem. Is the basket uncomfortable? Fang Xiaokong thought for a while. Why don't you just squat in my bag? In the end, Jing Tan didn't squat in the big travel bag. Instead, he stood on top of the bag. He had claws to hook onto the bag so that he wouldn't fall, and he wouldn't sway like he did in the basket. He could even step on Fang Xiaokong's head twice. Fang Xiaokong, who had his head stepped on, thought that the cat must have done it on purpose. No wonder people said that cats were vengeful. He should buy a hat the next time he went to the city. Otherwise, the cat would really rebel. He, third young master Fang, had never been stepped on like this before. After getting out of the village road and onto the national highway, the feeling was much better. There was no more bumping, and Jing Tan could even take a nap on the bag. Jing Tan was comfortable, but Fang Xiaokong gradually felt tired. After the novelty wore off, he began to feel tired. The backpack was heavy, and with a cat, it was even heavier. After riding for a few hours, they found a place to rest. When they set off again, under Fang Xiaokong's complaints, Jing Tan went back to squatting on the basket to relieve the pressure on third Uncle Fang. The roads on the national highway were much better than the village roads, so Jing Tan didn't have much of an opinion. Just like that, they rode and stopped, and they didn't enter the city until evening. They found a small hotel to stay in. Because he didn't know if the owner of the hotel allowed him to bring a cat, Jing Tan hid in the bag and went in. The room wasn't big. It was a single room. The other facilities were quite complete. After riding for half a day, Fang Xiaokong was so tired that he almost collapsed. However, before he collapsed, he took out his digital SLR camera and looked at the photos he took today. He also took out a small notebook to make some notes. While Fang Xiaokong was organizing the photos and notes, Jing Tan ran to the bathroom. He filled the bathtub to the brim and adjusted the temperature of the water. Then, he started to take a bath. He hadn't taken a bath in a long time. In addition, he was too tired from riding the basket today. Jing Tan decided to take a good bath. His main purpose was to drown the fleas on his body. Jing Tan was helpless about fleas. They couldn't be eradicated. Even if he didn't come into contact with other animals, he could still get some in the grass. He squeezed some shower gel, rubbed it casually, and started to swim. Based on his current size, this bathtub could indeed be used as a small swimming pool for Jing Tan. It was better when he was a human. He wouldn't attract so many fleas. Jing Tan sighed in his heart. When Fang Xiaokong finished organizing his things and went into the bathroom, he saw the black cat swimming in the bathtub. It looked very comfortable. Damn, it even squeezed shower gel. Fang Xiaokong had friends who also owned cats, so he had heard that most cats didn't like to take baths. Just as Zhao Li said, this cat was very special. Black cats were really strange. Fang Xiaokong thought to himself. After Jing Tan finished bathing, he found a hairdryer and dried his fur. The hairdryer was placed on the table. He turned on the button and set it to hot air. Then, Jing Tan constantly adjusted the angle to dry his fur. It was a little troublesome. As long as it could solve the problem, it was fine. When Fang Xiaokong came out of the bathroom, he looked at the only bed and the black cat lying in the middle. He was speechless for a long time. The cat's habit of occupying territory was really king annoying. The next day, the man and the cat slept until almost noon. Jing Tan was fine. After taking a bath and getting rid of the fleas, he also had a good sleep and was full of energy. Fang Xiaokong, on the other hand, felt some intense pain in his neck and back. His spine also hurt, the after effects of riding a bike. Riding a mountain bike for a long distance also required attention. From the bike to the rider's posture, there were rules. Fang Xiaokong didn't know anything, so it was natural for him to be like this. After lunch, Fang Xiaokong and Jing Tan went out. Fang Xiaokong asked. The young man scratched his head, a little embarrassed. Not sure. When I was alone, I didn't make much. It took me a few days to get enough money for a bus ticket. Now it's better. We'll just sing here for a while. The day before yesterday, we contacted a small bar. We'll sing there later. It's still early. Singing here is just for practice. Fang Xiaokong looked at the coins on the ground thoughtfully. Before he left, he found a shop and rented a guitar. It was not a very good guitar, and it was not as good as the ones in the hands of the children. At night, when he returned to the small hotel, Fang Xiaokong tried the guitar. At first, he was a little shaky, but gradually he became proficient. Obviously, he had practiced before. Jing Tan was about to go to bed when Feng Xiaokong called him over. Black charcoal, let's go perform tomorrow. Jing Tan was speechless. Why would this guy suddenly have such an idea? I heard that a lot of people perform with their pets. They make a lot of money. Here, I've specially prepared this for you. As he spoke, Feng Xiaokong took out a glass can that he had finished eating. In his other hand, he picked up a metal spoon from who knows where. He knocked the can with the spoon, making a crisp, ding sound. Looking at the can and the spoon, Jing Tan roughly knew what Feng Xiaokong wanted him to do. However, at this time, he pretended that he didn't understand. Seeing that the cat in front of him didn't respond, Feng Xiaokong thought to himself, that's not right. Zhao said that this cat can understand human language and is very capable. If you want to express something, you can just say it directly. There's no need to use food to induce it. After a moment of silence, Feng Xiaokong said, didn't they say that you're very smart? Don't you know how to do this? It's not as magical as Zhao said. Provocation didn't work. Jing Tan continued to lower his head, pretending that he didn't know. How about this? You see, I don't have much pocket money. Look at the small hotel we're staying in now. The conditions are too bad. Tomorrow, we'll perform on the streets. If we make more money, we'll stay in a better hotel. The kind with double rooms. Each of us has a bed. It's spacious, not crowded, and we don't have to fight for pillows and blankets. What do you think? Jing Tan really thought about it this time. Just because Feng Xiaokong said that he didn't have pocket money didn't mean that he didn't have money. Therefore, Jing Tan treated this sentence as a fart. However, if they could really change to a better hotel, Jing Tan would certainly be willing. There were flies and mosquitoes in this place, and it was annoying. Also, if we make money, we'll take a bus to the next city. We won't ride a bike. Jing Tan looked at Feng Xiaokong. He believed that they wouldn't ride a bike. Feng Xiaokong had suffered a lot riding a bike. He didn't want to ride a bike anymore, but he used it as a condition. However, if that was really the case, Jing Tan was willing to give it a try. He was afraid that Feng Xiaokong would suddenly decide to walk on foot. That would be terrible. Today, he saw Feng Xiaokong shopping in a shop that sold tents. He probably did have that idea. Feng Xiaokong knocked on the glass jar twice with a metal spoon. Then, he placed the spoon in front of Jing Tan, waiting for Jing Tan to make a decision. Jing Tan poked at the metal spoon. Even if he was willing to give it a try, this metal spoon wasn't easy to hold. Oh, there's also this. Feng Xiaokong took out a rolled-up paper tube and stuck it on the metal spoon with transparent tape. The paper tube was just enough for Jing Tan to put one of his arms in. Jing Tan looked at Feng Xiaokong. This guy really came prepared. He put his arm into the paper tube. When he raised his arm, he also raised the metal spoon and knocked on the glass jar. Ding! There was a crisp sound. Yes, just like that. Here, I'll sing a line, and you knock it. Feng Xiaokong plucked the metal strings of his guitar and began to sing. Twinkle, 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 Jing Tan. So retarded. Seeing Feng Xiaokong looking at him, Jing Tan took a deep breath and knocked the spoon over. Ding! Very good. Continue. The sky is full of little stars, ding. Hang in the sky and shine, ding. They practiced until 11 o'clock. The person next door couldn't take it anymore and knocked on the door to scold them. Only then did the man and cat stop. The next day, Feng Xiaokong asked Jing Tan to continue practicing with him. After lunch, they took a nap and went out at 4 o'clock. The sky wasn't dark yet, but there were already more people at the square. In the corner, the 5 young people he saw yesterday were there again. After making some adjustments, they began to sing. The songs they sang included popular music and classic songs from the past. They were all songs that young people liked and were full of energy. Feng Xiaokong looked over there, then found a place where there was no one and put the prepared paper box in front of him. There was an opening on the paper box. Jing Tan felt that it was like a donation box, and he was the poor cat that needed everyone to do good. People around saw the situation and came over. Fang Xiaokong was wearing a hat, and he hadn't shaved his beard in the past few days. It was hard to see his original appearance. Jing Tan felt that he must have done it on purpose. After putting away the paper box, Fang Xiaokong put the glass bottle aside, then took out his guitar, leaned against a lamppost, and began to strum. The curious gazes of the people around made Jing Tan's face hot. Whether he was a human or a cat, he had never performed in front of so many people. This made him very embarrassed. It was okay when he was in the hotel, after all, no one was looking. But now, with so many people looking at him, Jing Tan felt that the iron spoon weighed 1,000 pounds. He really didn't want to touch that thing. Not far away, the 5 young people finished singing "Glorious Years," and also noticed them. Hey! It's about to start. Fang Xiaokong reminded Jing Tan. Jing Tan pulled his ears. It didn't seem good to leave now. It felt like he was running away. After mentally preparing himself, Jing Tan put his arm into the paper box of the iron spoon. More and more people gathered around out of curiosity. Fang Xiaokong also began to strum the guitar. His skills were not very good in the eyes of the young people. After a prelude, Fang Xiaokong's heroic voice sounded. Walking in all directions, the road is long and the river is long. Jing Tan braced himself and lifted the iron spoon to hit the glass bottle. Ding! Hazy and hazy, a village and a village, ding! Watching the setting sun come back, ding! The earth is not old, the sky is not desolate, the years are long and long. When Fang Xiaokong sang the first line, one of the young people who was drinking water spat it out. No one would have thought that this uncle would actually sing this song while playing the guitar. The playing was terrible, and the singing was terrible, but more and more people gathered around. And many people began to throw money into the paper box. Jing Tan felt like an idiot. No, he and Fang Xiaokong were both idiots. Chapter 67. In a big city, the city square was always bustling at night. Music from the shops, various mobile advertisements, dynamic hip-hop tunes, and ethnic customs of old ladies. But tonight, more and more people gathered in the corner that people usually didn't pay attention to. Hey, let's go and see. There's a cat knocking on a bottle over there. Knocking on a bottle? Yeah, I heard that it's a homeless singer's pet. The 2 of them are performing. Sounds interesting. Let's go and see. Mom, I want to see the cat knocking on the bottle too. Okay, let's go and see the cat knocking on the bottle. The people in the city didn't have so many scruples about the black cat. They came to watch for something new and for fun. People's living standards had improved, and they didn't have to worry about food and clothing anymore. They would try to find entertainment for themselves to pass the time. It was the first time in a long time that they saw people performing with cats in the square. And the coordination was really good. Jing Tan looked at the increasing crowd of onlookers. He lowered his head and looked at the glass bottle in front of him seriously, but he didn't look at the audience. For Jing Tan, even if he didn't have a good character when he was a human, he still cared about his reputation. He never thought that there would be a day when he would be reduced to performing on the street and being watched by people. Jing Tan could only feel lucky that this wasn't the era of advanced communication a few years later. Otherwise, his knocking on the bottle would be posted on the internet, and it might even be reposted many times. That would be even more embarrassing. Following the tune of Fang Xiaokong's broken voice and knocking on the glass bottle, Jing Tan sighed in his heart. How could time pass so slowly? It felt like hours had passed, but in fact, it was only 2 songs, less than 10 minutes. Jing Tan suddenly remembered something that Jiao Pa once said to Jiao Yuan: people have to learn to adjust themselves. When you don't want to face it but have to face it, you can try to change your mindset to comfort yourself. This will give you a better mentality to face the next challenge. Change my mindset and adjust my mentality. Jing Tan raised his head slightly and looked at the cardboard box that had been stuffed with an unknown amount of money. Looking at it from another angle, this money was earned by knocking on bottles, not by sneaking through windows and doors. Speaking of which, why didn't he feel guilty when he was stealing things through the window? Why did he feel embarrassed when he was working as a street performer to earn money? To put it bluntly, it was just a matter of face. This was also a very ridiculous and shameless attitude, but it was something that many people had. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, it was indeed very unnatural. Looking at Fang Xiaokong, who was singing enthusiastically next to him, he had already gone off-key and forgotten his lines several times, but wasn't he still singing cheerfully? It seemed that he still had to grind his skin a little more. In order to roam the Jianghu, one had to be thick-skinned. For the first time, Jing Tan understood the meaning of hard-earned money. His hands were sore from knocking on the bottles. Just as Fang Xiaokong was considering changing songs, Jing Tan switched hands. The onlookers gasped in amazement again. Aya, that cat can even switch hands. My cat can do this too. He's probably tired, so pitiful. An auntie dug in her wallet, walked to the cardboard box, and stuffed the money in her hand into it. With one person taking the lead, there was a second, a third. Fang Xiaokong sighed in his heart. A person's face was not as useful as a cat's. He had been singing for so long, and his voice was hoarse, but no one cared. Instead, the cat next to him got sympathy just by changing hands. That woman just now took out 100 yuan in one go. It seemed that the living standards of the people in this city were indeed good. After singing 2 more old songs, Fang Xiaokong came to an intermission. At this time, someone came over to talk to Fang Xiaokong, asking him where he was from, where the cat came from, why he wanted to come here to sing, and so on. Jing Tan was too lazy to listen to Fang Xiaokong's nonsense. This guy was not telling the truth, and he was trying to trick people into sympathizing with him. As for the enthusiastic aunties around him, Jing Tan could not stand it. He climbed up a tree next to him, and no matter how the people below called him, he did not come down. Sometimes, Jing Tan did not understand why people liked to call cats Mimi when they saw them, regardless of whether the cat was male or female, or whether the cat had a name or not. The first person to call a cat that way was really King talented. In the past, this word was only associated with big-breasted girls in Jing Tan's dictionary. However, ever since he became a cat, he did not know how many times he had been called that. Every time he heard this word, no matter who it was, Jing Tan would turn his head and walk away. Therefore, after the aunties below shouted Mimi at Jing Tan's ears twitched, and he decisively climbed up the tree. While Jing Tan was hiding from the enthusiastic aunties, and Fang Xiaokong was talking nonsense, the 5 young people singing in the corner were also talking. Is it the guy from yesterday? That uncle came to ask us questions yesterday. I didn't expect him to come with a guitar today. That uncle. I think I saw a camera hanging around his neck yesterday. It's a DSLR camera. Yes, a digital DSLR camera. That thing is quite expensive. The reason I remember it is because of his camera. After saying that, the 5 people were silent for a while, and then one of them said, "Damn, so this uncle actually has nothing better to do, so he came to steal business from us?" When young people did this occasionally, it was called rebellion or curiosity. But if a man in his late 40s did this kind of thing, people would think that he was crazy. Actually, the important thing is that black cat, right? I suddenly feel like I've been hit, one of them said. The oldest one, Jean, was the lead singer of this newly formed band, and also the boss of this new band. He greeted the people with different thoughts and prepared to continue singing. At this time, a woman with heavy makeup came over and greeted them. They knew this woman. She was the relative of the owner of the small bar who had invited them to sing. She had just come to shop and received a call from the owner of the bar, so she brought a message. After saying that, she flipped her hair and walked away in her thin high heels. She really looked down on these street performers. The message that the woman brought over was mainly to tell them that they did not have to go tonight. Another band that was singing in front of them was celebrating a birthday, and they were going to book the whole place. It was estimated that they would sing until the wee hours of the morning. The 5 young people did not look good. However, since leaving home until now, they had encountered a lot of things, and they had encountered similar situations. They had no money and no reputation now. To put it bluntly, they were nothing. They could not blame others for looking down on them. As the bassist of this new band, the young man stood aside and did not speak. He did not like to talk much. He strummed the bass in his hand, and the music was a little tired and struggling. "Hey, you guys." Just as the 5 young people were thinking about what to do for the rest of the night, Fang Xiaokong came to them and told them about his plan. Ensemble? As the lead singer and leader of the band, Jean was a little surprised. "Yes, ensemble. Of course, my level is limited, but I still have this understanding. So, it's not me who will work with you." As he spoke, Fang Xiaokong pointed to Jingtan, who was squatting in the tree and looking up at the stars. "It will come over and join you. How about it?" Jean thought about it. From the situation just now, he knew that the cat could attract people. Of course, it would be okay if everyone came over and cooperated. Moreover, when they were discussing just now, they were ready to leave the city for the next stop. Anyway, they were not in a hurry. After making the decision, Jean nodded. "I have no problem. What about everyone?" The other 4 did not object. They were very happy to have such a special experience before leaving. They had never worked with a cat before. Zheng Tan had been squatting in the tree and counting the stars out of boredom, but he was told to play with those people. "Charcoal, look, your uncle can't sing anymore. My voice is hoarse, and I don't have enough money. If I work with those little fellows, I can earn more money. You just have to squat at the side and show your appreciation. You don't have to work too hard." Fang Xiaokong looked up and said to Jingtan, "And those little guys are quite pitiful. Today is probably the last time they will sing in this city. They will leave tomorrow. I want to help, but I don't have as much influence as you do." Jingtan looked at some people who were still standing around and did not leave. Then he looked at the 5 young people who were 17 or 18 years old. He thought about it. He was already somewhat resistant to this kind of shameless performance. It was okay to help a little and make some money. Anyway, he just needed to pretend to knock on the bottle twice. After discussing, Zheng Tan came to the 5 young people. Facing the black cat, the 5 young people did not know how to get along with it. Fang Xiaokong came from behind to help carry the bottle and spoon. After discussing with Jean, he borrowed a high stool and put the bottle and spoon on the side. Zheng Tan jumped onto the high stool. This time, he felt better than at the beginning. He was more shameless and adjusted his mentality. Isn't it just knocking on the spoon twice? What's the big deal? Seeing that they were ready to start again, the crowd slowly gathered again. It was only 8:00. The city's nightlife was very rich, not to mention the commercial square here. Compared to before, there were actually more people at this time. The 5 young people were not sure if they could cooperate with a cat. Fang Xiaokong came over and said a few words to calm them down. Zheng Tan, who was standing at the side, had some complaints. Could it be that these brats were looking down on him? Seeing Zheng Tan pulling his ears like that, Fang Xiaokong knew that the cat must be angry again. "Okay, let's get started." Fang Xiaokong waved his hand and put the paper box in a conspicuous place. Then he retreated to the side and sat down to watch. Seeing the paper box, the 5 young people's expressions were very unnatural. It was too straightforward. Their skills were still not as high as Fang Xiaokong's. "Hey, these little guys are still shy," Fang Xiaokong said to the person sitting next to him. There was also a middle-aged man sitting there. He was the owner of the musical instrument store where Fang Xiaokong rented the guitar. In addition to guitars and basses, Jin and the others rented drums and keyboards from this shop. Most of the time, he would come here to listen to these young people sing. If Zheng Tan had a playful attitude at the beginning, he had already immersed himself in it. He knocked on the bottles with great passion, which was completely different from the lazy attitude he had when he first cooperated with Fang Xiaokong. Young people were always easily affected by the atmosphere and did not know what they were doing. Even if it was just a cat now, it was still the same. The owner of the musical instrument store, who was sitting not far away, praised, "Your cat is good at knocking bottles. This is the first time I've seen a cat knock bottles like this, like you're stirring up eggs." Fang Xiaokong. Haha. It was also the first time he had seen it. More and more people gathered around. At first, most of them were people who came to watch the cat knock bottles, such as parents with children and aunties who had just finished dancing. Gradually, a group of young people gathered here. People liked to watch and join in the fun. Seeing that there were so many people here, everyone came over. Then, they were affected by the atmosphere. Some sang along, some clapped, and some cheered. For the young people, it was a familiar song, and it was easy to pick it up. Fang Xiaokong took out a camera from his backpack and began to take pictures. "Hey, isn't this in DSLR? If you have the money to buy in DSLR, why are you here performing? Are performers so rich now?" Someone who had seen Fang Xiaokong sing asked. "No," Fang Xiaokong calmly raised his finger and pointed in a direction. "I borrowed it from a student of the photography club over there. I have to return it later." The man looked in the direction that Fang Xiaokong was pointing at. There were people everywhere, so he couldn't tell which one he was referring to. However, there were indeed photography clubs here. Every once in a while, someone would come here to hold a student photography exhibition. Shaking his head, the person did not say anything else. When Zheng Tan was tired of knocking, he would switch to his left hand. After a while, he would switch back. He had a lot of fun, and when he knocked bottles, he would look at the cardboard box from time to time. Seeing people constantly putting money into the cardboard box, Zheng Tan was even happier. They did not leave until after 10 o'clock at night, when there were fewer people in the square. Zheng Tan threw the iron spoon away and rushed to the cardboard box to take a look. The light was not good, so he could not see how much money was inside. However, it should be enough to pay for the car and the hotel. When Jin was packing up after the event, he still hadn't calmed down. "For a moment just now, I felt like I was a celebrity. So many people supported me and cheered for me. It was just like the dream I had back then. Yes, that feeling was so good." The others echoed his sentiments. The owner of the music store went over to talk to them. Tomorrow, these boys would go to the north.